All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's City Council regular meeting for Monday, January 8th. A couple of study session items for tonight. We actually have them in reverse order tonight. We're going to be starting first with Finance Manager Kevin Engels here to discuss the November 2023 monthly financial report. Good evening, Mr. Engels.
Evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Kevin Engels, Finance Manager for the city, and today we'll be discussing the November 2023 General Fund Financial Report. So we'll start with the General Fund revenues. Year to date for 2023 through November, we're at 94.4% of the budget. That compares to 89.6% in 2022. So here's a breakdown of the different revenue categories. I believe in the October report, Mayor, you had asked for some additional information on sales tax revenues. So you'll see there on the line item, it looks like we're up a little over 9% for the year. Most of that is related to this increase that the voters approved last year. If you adjust that out, the actual increase, the growth rate is 1.4%. So that's a little bit less than what we've been seeing over the last few years. Now, one thing to keep in mind about that, we're comparing it to 2022, which was a record year for sales tax collections. It's going to be a hard year to compare to. Licenses and permits are also down fairly significantly, and that was due to 2022 also being a very strong year for building permits. Most of the other categories are tracking along nicely, and we've talked about investment earnings before. That has bounced back nicely since the Federal Reserve stopped raising interest rates so quickly. This slide shows you sales and use tax by different business types. Once again, mostly tracking even or a little above last year. So no real surprises there. We did have one large refund that was processed in November. That was a company that paid us tax that was not owed to the city. That was about $300,000. We'll move on to expenditures. Through November, we're at 86.7% of the budget, and that compares to 89.4% last year. Two line items I wanted to point out to you are public works and police. The increased spending there is directly related to that sales tax increase that was dedicated for. The public works piece was dedicated for road maintenance, and police was dedicated for alternative policing. But if you'll see on the 2023 column, all the departments are trending within budget. The slide shows you expenditures by category. Everything's trending with a little bit of inflationary pressures. You'll notice capital, significant increase here this year. That once again, that's public works road maintenance. You've probably all driven down Broadway and see how nice it is now. So when you compare the revenues to expenditures, for 23, we're running an operating surplus of just over $4 million. And for same time last year, we were at 6.37 million surplus. These are transfers in and out of the general fund. The only thing new from last time is that bottom line item under transfers out, the $251,000. That's the yearly Englewood Downtown Development Authority sales tax TIF. We make that payment in November of each year. Fund balance composition. See under the 23 year-to-date amount, we've got total fund balance of 24.8 million. A few line items there with some items that are restricted. And then you've got an unrestricted reserve of 10.8 million. And once those are all removed, you end up with 11 million unassigned fund balance. We wanted to give you a final accounting of the Englewood Environmental Foundation dissolution. All the titles to all the properties and all the physical assets have all been transferred to the city. That totaled just under $10 million net book value. And then also there was some remaining cash of just over $1 million, and that has been transferred into the general fund and is part of that 11 million unassigned fund balance we saw on the last slide. One additional EF item under 2024 impacts. You'll see later in tonight's meeting, there's a budget supplemental coming forward in front of you for Public Works for 1.8 million, I believe it is. And that's because they're taking over the common area maintenance duties that used to be EF. Those costs are offset by revenues from the various CAM participants. The rest of the slides are just area sales tax slides. So I won't go through those individually, but I'd be glad to take any questions that you might have.
Sounds great, Mr. Engels. Thank you very much for the presentation. Any questions for members of council? Go ahead, Member Russell, and then Member Wright.
Thank you. So the $11 million that we have gotten from EF that's been transferred back, can that be used for the Public Works budget?
So the 10 million that was assets, that's like buildings and infrastructure. So that's not necessarily, it couldn't be used for, unless we decided to sell something. The 1 million cash, yes, definitely can be used to offset.
Will that be enough to offset the expenses that Public Works has incurred to this point that we haven't budgeted for?
It would be plenty to cover that, yes.
Okay.
Well, now we're talking about November and December of 23, correct?
Yes.
Because those 2 months, this would be plenty to cover. We are coming forward with a supplemental for the 2024 expenses.
Okay, but then also, well, we've already passed the 2024 budget. That's why we have to do the supplemental.
Yes, correct.
So that money should help us with the changeover, because then the common area maintenance income should offset that also. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Member Wright.
Okay, looking at the general fund revenues, just under $1 million, what is the miscellaneous?
So miscellaneous is really anything that doesn't fit under one of these categories, these other categories. Typically, it might be like a refund or something we received on something that isn't related to one of these other other categories.
Okay, so it's going back to the people, or it is coming into us?
It is coming into us.
Okay, and then I'm not sure if I saw it in this presentation or another one where we were looking at revenues from the plastic bag collection. Is that in this?
It is.
Okay, are we accounting for losing that revenue coming up since we're phasing out the plastic bags?
Yeah, that was more of a one-time or 1 year item.
Okay.
We know we won't be getting that in the future.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Any further questions for members of council? Seeing none, Mr. Engels, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to agenda item 1A. This is Deputy City Manager Tim Dodd, Deputy Director of Parks, Rec, Library, and Golf, Brad Anderson, and Carson Bise, and Bise and Tishler Bise. Thank you for the pronunciation. Here to discuss the development impact fees.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I'm Tim Dodd, Deputy City Manager. I'll give a really quick introduction of our consultant, Carson Bise, then I'll turn it over to him. First, I just want to thank, as you mentioned, Mayor, Brad Anderson, Deputy Director of our Parks, Recreation, Library, and Golf Department, who is my partner in doing this work. I also wanted to mention there was a transcription error in the memo where it had the population increase and housing increase sizes as the same. That was incorrect in the memo, and I apologize, but it's correct in the calculations and also in the PowerPoint on slide 50 in your packet, where the population increase is 5,358 and the housing increase is 3,390. Mr. Bise, who's behind me, I appreciate him, hot from the East Coast, just flew in. Thank him for coming out here and for his work. His organization, his company, Tishler Bise, one of their main area of focus is on doing studies such as this. They've done them for all over the United States. They've done several in Colorado. As you're going to hear tonight, and as you saw in your packet, these fees are governed by a variety of statutes and other laws and regulations. So there are certain things that we can and can't do with the funding. Mr. Bise came out a couple times this summer. He met with several departments. And so the proposals that you see before you are the best work of someone who's done this quite a bit in many different places, as well as the best estimates that have been provided to him from our department directors. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Bise for the presentation, and I'll give you this.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. If you recall, this is our third shot at making this presentation. The first one, we had technical difficulties after my presentation, and then I got COVID the second time. So it's nice to finally be here in front of you. A little bit about us, as Tim mentioned, we do focus on impact fees. We're the national leader in doing this type of work. We've done more of this work than anybody in the country, and you can see here we've got quite a few clients here in the state of Colorado. Let's talk a little bit about impact fees in general. They are one-time payments designed to offset new developments demands on capital facilities. It's basically a contractual arrangement with the development community. So by collecting the first dollar, you're obligating yourself to build infrastructure to serve new development. It's not a tax, and the reason I mention that is I can't tell you how many meetings I've been to across the country where someone says this is a tax on new development. And I'm sure, as you're aware, a tax's purpose is primarily revenue raising, and a fee is designed to cover the cost of something. And with impact fees, it's even a more stringent test. We have to meet three prongs of a legal test. We have to meet nexus or need, so we have to show that the city is growing or redeveloping, and that activity is going to generate the need for additional facilities if we're going to maintain current levels of service. We also have to show proportionality, which is why we just don't simply have a residential fee versus a non-residential fee. We have to bifurcate those into different categories like single family versus multifamily, office versus retail versus industrial, et cetera, so that we assure that growth pays its proportionate share relative to its demand. And then we also have to show or meet what we call the benefit test, which is why sometimes with larger cities or large counties, you may see benefit zones or benefit areas, but in a city the size of Englewood, you're really providing a citywide level of service. You're small enough that we don't need to get into benefit zones and that sort of thing. So impact fees in Colorado are governed by a enabling statute. There are 29 such enabling statutes in the country. There are a few states where cities are doing it through home rule powers. But there are a few things in the Colorado Act that are different than others, and that is it doesn't define specific infrastructure categories like other acts do. Like, for instance, Arizona prohibits you using fees for general government facilities. It limits parks to sizes of 30 acres, et cetera. Where Colorado statute basically says an improvement of facility that's directly related to any service that a local government is authorized to provide. One caveat is any of the infrastructure or vehicles or equipment that we include in the impact fee study does have to have a useful life of 5 years. There are specific accounting requirements, and that's part and parcel of all impact fee acts where we have to publish an annual report. And that can be as simple as a one-pager that says we took in X amount of dollars, we spent Y amount of dollars, and here's our balance going forward. And it does allow local governments to waive an impact fee on the development of lower moderate housing. It's one of the few acts that does address this. However, it doesn't address whether local government is required to make up the difference. So it's sort of impact fee practice where if you are waiving, let's say, $200,000 in fees for an affordable housing project, you do have to find that money from another source of revenue in order to make the CIP whole. This slide summarizes that exercise we go through to show the nexus or need. So as part of the study, we have estimated population increases, housing unit increases, employment and non-residential activity. You can see here we're projecting an increase of slightly over 5,350 persons, a housing unit increase of about 3,390 units, a slight decrease in employment of 420, because we're projecting that as a result of redevelopment activities, you would lose jobs in the industrial sector and the retail sector, but gain jobs in service and institutional. A non-residential floor increase of 344,000 square feet. And let's start with the actual fee categories. The first one is police. The service area is citywide. We've used two different methodologies, and there's 3 different methodologies we can use. And the way to think about those are the past, the present, and the future. So when we look to the past, we call that a cost recovery. It's basically used when you've oversized infrastructure. For instance, if you've built a wastewater treatment plant that has 4 million gallons of excess capacity, new development's buying into that, or if you've just built a new public safety facility that's oversized for new growth, we buy into that facility. Then we use what we call a consumption-based methodology, which is basically a snapshot of your current levels of service in terms of, let's say, number of park acres per thousand. It cost us X amount of dollars to buy an acre of land, and we're going to incrementally expand our park system. And then the plan-based approach is where we basically set the fee based on an adopted master plan that has a funding strategy attached with it to fund the non-growth share because we can't use impact fees to correct existing deficiencies. So with police, we're using a consumption-based approach for vehicles. We're using a cost recovery approach for police station, the recent police station expansion. And over the next 10 years, we are projecting $66,000 in demand and revenue for future police vehicles, and you would generate approximately $1.57 million in cost recovery revenue to go toward paying yourself back for the existing police or the recently expanded police station. This slide shows the fees as we work our way down. At the top of the slide, you see the cost per person, the cost per vehicle trip for residential and non-residential development. And then you should see the residential fees, which are shown single family versus multifamily. And we get a proposed fee of $807 for single family as opposed to $509 for multifamily. These are substantial increases over your $60 per unit fee. And then when we look to non-residential development, increases there as well. Industrial has the lowest fee at $286 per 1,000 square feet, followed by office and other services at $652, and then commercial retail uses generate a fee of $1,469 per 1,000 square feet. This shows the cash flow. As we work our way down, we show that the total cost for the police station was $15.7 million. And then the consumption-based approach for vehicles yields you $66,000. So as you see here, the projected fee revenue is $1.6 million. Part of that is for the vehicles, and then $1,570,000 of that is money that pays yourself back for the recently expanded police station. Moving on to Parks and Recreation, again, a citywide service area. We're using a consumption-based approach for park improvements. There is no land component assumed. Discussions with city staff indicate that there aren't going to be many opportunities for you guys to buy large pieces of raw land. So the focus of this fee is to make improvements to existing land that the city already owns. And the 10-year demand is 2.4 or 2.5 million in demand, and also equals 2.5 million in revenue. This shows the park fee. Your current fee is $200 per single family and multifamily unit. We're proposing substantial increases to that. The single family fee is $1,110 compared to the multifamily fee of $701. This shows the cash flow. The park improvement demand is 2.5 million, and revenue approximates that amount of demand. And finally, moving on to multimodal transportation. Citywide service area is proposed for this fee. The methodology includes trails, complete streets, and pedestrian bike improvements. We're utilizing a plan-based approach based on a projected 5-year plan. Over the next 10 years, you would generate 1.9 million in revenue for future multimodal projects. This shows the 5-year improvement plan, and you may ask, why are we showing a 5-year improvement plan, but we're looking at 10-year demand? And that's because a lot of these improvements are providing capacity that exceed the first 5 years of development. Okay, so the total cost of this CIP is $48 million. And one of the challenges we have with the plan-based approach is we do not have a master plan that this is based on with traffic modeling, so we really don't have a traffic model that is projected or has determined what the growth share of these projects are. And so because of that, we have to treat all development equally. So we can't charge new development for a higher level of service than we have today. So in order to assure that we're not going to do that, we have spread this CIP cost over the projected demand base over the 10-year horizon, so that everybody's treated equally. So it's existing trips added to new trips. And so we see here, and we use person trips versus vehicle trips because of the multimodal nature of the projects. So we see a single family fee, and you don't have a fee for transportation now, is $1,882 as compared to $902. For multifamily units, from a non-residential perspective, the highest fee is commercial and certain retail services, which is $4,130 per 1,000 square feet, followed by office, and finally industrial at $803 per 1,000 square feet. And this shows the transportation cash flow. Again, that total CIP is $48 million, but the incremental increase you're going to get in revenue is fairly small at $1.9 million. So the city, by adopting this fee, would be on the hook for coming up with the other $46 million in order to make the plan whole. And finally, we have a fee comparison. It's, in most communities we work with, folks want to know, well, how does our proposed fee schedule compare to other jurisdictions? And we've got your current fee is at the bottom, and it's a total of $260 because you've got the park fee at $60, lease fee at $200. And if you were to adopt these current or the proposed fees at their maximum supportable amounts, it puts you at $3,798, which puts you in the middle of the pack among these peer communities, but much, much lower than the next highest fee, which would be Littleton, which is $7,188, and the highest fee is for Commerce City at $12,344. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. Bise, thank you very much for your presentation tonight. Member Russell, kick us off.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And I just have a couple of questions. Why is Littleton able to recover $7,188? I mean, what are they doing different than we are?
Well, good question. And we didn't do Littleton's fee study. But one, they're collecting for different categories. So for instance, they're collecting almost $2,000 for what we'll call the general government facilities category, which includes things like City Hall, community centers, things like that. So that adds their total. Also, their transportation fee, they've got another fee that's $1,965 that, I can't remember exactly what it's for, but It's one of those, we call it, the category is called other, but it's just odd types of fees that we see that some jurisdictions have. A lot of those are holdovers. They're grandfathered in from prior to 2001 when the Impact Fee Act came into place in the state of Colorado. But they've got several more fees than the city of Englewood does.
Okay, I appreciate that. Then also, in 2017, the original general obligation bond was $32 million for the police station, and it should have been big enough for future growth. So why are we not using the original amount versus the debt limit on it right now?
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have the answer to that. I don't have the report in front of me. But I will check on that and get back to you.
Okay, and then the other thing that I was a little concerned about, so this report was done this summer, correct? It was
Yes, it was.
completed then, so that was for 2023. In reading the study, some of the level of service that the police department has seems like it was older than 2023. And I will tell you, I'm very concerned about the price that they used for the cars, because I pulled a couple of car purchases from 2021. I pulled one from 2022. The average price of the cars was more like $39,000 than $33,000. And so, I mean, just as you were presenting, I thought, oh, well, we would make more money, but it's wrong. If this is a purchase order from April 4th, 2022. And in here, it says purchase of these units at 7 police vehicles from Silterhar Motors. Purchase of these units is recommended in 2022 as it is likely that delivery of these vehicles will not occur until 2023 due to material shortage and supply chains. In addition, these units are likely to increase in cost anywhere from 18 to 25% over the next year. So inflation is eating us up, but it bothers me that we did not take that into consideration.
Well, one reason for that, Ms. Russell, is we're using the total fleet inventory and getting a weighted average. So I think what you're referring to is the purchase price of a brand new car, which is being deflated by the fact that you've got other vehicles in the fleet that may not cost as much as a brand new police car to purchase new.
Okay, so that's just some of my concerns. But one other thing that troubles me a little bit is that I personally don't believe our level of service in the police department is accurate for today. And we have already increased the population, and we're going to be increasing it more. And we're still basing it on information, the number of police officers from 5 years ago at least. I mean, we've supposedly added some more, but how are we, if population growth requires more police officers, that has nothing to do with the cars.
Right.
And how do you recover that?
So, I mean, you're asking a complex question, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Mm-hmm.
When you say not accurate, are you really meaning that you feel that the police level of service standard is inadequate? Yes,
that's what I meant.
So
Okay.
that's one avenue, okay?
Right.
The second is when you mention police officers per thousand, that's more on the operating side, right? And we can't use impact fees for operating, and we also can't use impact fees to correct existing deficiencies. So the level of service is what the city has funded in the current year budget, so to speak, in terms of personnel, vehicles, and facilities.
Okay, I appreciate that. I do have more questions, but I'll wait and let other people weigh in first. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell, Member Anderson, then Member Wright.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of questions as well. First of all, you talked a little bit about how you calculated some of these things, but I didn't catch how you calculate the potential population increases. Is that just from demographic data, or where's that coming from?
Well, we looked at several things and had conversations with several staff members, primarily from planning. So we looked at Dr. Cog, which is inaccurate because they're not capturing the redevelopment activity. So then we looked at what's been we worked with planning to look at what's been happening over the last 3 to 5 years. How has the mix of units been changing? Because if we look at your current census data and look at that mix, that's not the mix you're getting going into the future. And then we looked, the planning supplied us with an inventory of approved projects or a pipeline and their best guess of what's coming. And that's how we came up with the projection going forward.
Okay. Now, one thing I'm kind of curious about, just wanted to make sure I understand this is a fee, not a tax, but I also recognize that when we, build a new apartment complex, for example, our tax revenues increase, both property tax and sales taxes, that could then be also utilized for, expanding parks or providing new services or something like that. How do we know that we're not double dipping on something like that? I want to be careful not to.
Good question, because I didn't mention credits, but that's one of the things that we have to guard against in the impact fee methodology, and that is paying twice, once through the impact fee and then again through a future stream of revenue, okay? So credits are required when you've got dedicated revenue sources. So for instance, we work with a lot of communities that may have a dedicated property tax that goes to transportation or parks or whatever, or a sales tax that's specifically earmarked. And so if there's not a clear demarcation between, I don't want to make this more complicated than it should be. If there's not a demarcation between we're only going to use the property tax or the sales tax to do rehab and renovation or replacement, or we're going to leverage that to improve the level of service, right? Or pay the growth share, then we don't have to give a credit. But if we can't show or prove that you're going to pay the sales tax and the impact fee, and they're both likely to go to parks, then we have to give a credit. Does that make sense?
Okay, so the actual fee they would pay, they would get some credit on that fee before they ever.
If there's dedicated revenue. What I'm hearing you say is basically you don't have dedicated revenue sources for these three infrastructure categories. So whatever sales tax and property tax being generated is going into the general fund.
That's right.
And it's it's fungible revenue, right?
Right.
You can use it however you want.
Okay. So we wouldn't really take that into account, since it's it's possible that we're double dipping in some. We use some of that revenue from the new sales tax to build something new that we also collect an impact fee for. Other question is, if someone, for example, demolishes an existing single-family home to build a new one, do they pay an impact fee?
Great question. So under your structure, no, because you're replacing. So one for one, you're tearing down a single-family house and replacing with a single-family house. In communities where we have done the residential fee by size of house, some communities do collect for, like if you tear down a 1,200 square foot bungalow and build a 6,000 square foot house, most of the time there's some sort of cushion where the ordinance will say, you're allowed to expand up to 20% without a fee, to catch things like, you're bumping out your kitchen, et cetera, et cetera. But anything over that, you'd be liable for the fee. So since we're not proposing that structure here, you would not pay a fee. Now, for non-residential, if you were going to tear down, let's say, an industrial use and replace it with a retail use, most ordinances would require, because the retail is a more intensive land use, that you pay the delta between the industrial and the retail.
And the last question for now, do we have to reevaluate this? How often?
Good question. Not as much as other jurisdictions, in greenfield cities like, on the periphery of the Denver metro area, or, a lot of our clients in the Phoenix area where they're getting, 1,500 permits a year or 2,000 permits a year. I mean, they're doing their fees every 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Since you guys are in a redevelopment situation, I think you're fine to go for 5 years without revisiting this. But I would strongly recommend you revisit, because one, if growth has happened faster or redevelopments happen faster than you thought, or priorities have shifted, that's the opportunity to catch up the demographics as well as tweak the methodologies.
Very good, thank you.
Member Wright.
I think Member Anderson and Member Russell asked a lot of my questions, but I still have more. Our finance department gave us some information, and part of that was permitting has been down this year. So in your presentation or when you're looking at things, did you look at and factor in if our permittings does go down when you're factoring all of this? Because I believe that that's going to be a continuing trend as things go along here.
So, two things. No, we're not factoring, or there's not a scenario in the study that anticipates slower growth. If growth continues, then to Councilman Anderson's point, you may want to revisit the study in 2 or 3 years if it's a drastic increase or decrease. The second is only 2 of the 3 fees are 2 of the 3 fees are not affected by the growth projection, because we're essentially half of police and all the parks we're using the consumption-based approach.
Okay. And then Member Anderson mentioned if you knock down a single family, rebuild in single family. What about in the scenario you knock down a single family and you're putting up a duplex and it's still the owner doing that? Would they be?
They would pay for 1 unit. They're replacing one, and they would pay
So it's
one
one
on the
for
net
one
new.
only? Okay. All right. And I have little tabs here, so bear with me a second here.
And that's something, just to point out, that's something that would be addressed in the ordinance.
Okay.
And those are your
So we'd have to finely tune.
preferences.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm looking at, it kind of perplexes me. I'm looking at population growth and then also the non-residential trips and trips overall. How can our population continue to grow, but the residential trips go down year over year? It doesn't, I guess I need that to be explained to me and those, that are watching and pay attention to this. I know that there's a push for alternative transportation for folks to use, but it's a big jump for non-residential vehicle trips for people to continually go down.
It's because you're losing retail space and it's being converted to residential.
So that would be additional sales tax revenue that we would additionally start losing also. And that's not your conversation,
Possibly.
I understand.
But see, I would say most definitely yes before 2018, when the Wayfair versus North Dakota Supreme Court decision came, where you started to get the sales tax. So now we're really finding through our market studies that residential is the new retail. More people you get, the more they're spending in your community, and the more you can get mixed use. It's more of an organic retail model versus trying to go after the large big boxes.
And I think mixed use is the key word there.
Yeah.
And then under the projects, can you please explain to me what Rail Trail Segment 1, Segment 2, and Segment 3 are? Explain what that is.
Well, I'm not intimately familiar with the ins and outs of each of the projects.
Okay.
This was the list of projects that we worked with transportation staff on that are providing capacity in some respects. We went down the entire list of projects to ferret out which ones are purely safety, which ones would you do tomorrow if you shut the door and never let another person in. You'd still spend this money because you're correcting something,
Okay,
right?
okay.
Yeah.
And I could work with staff on some of that, so I'm getting up to speed too. So, okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Member Ward.
So I'll preface my comments by saying that I do have some skepticism on the difference between a tax and a fee, particularly here in Colorado, where we require taxpayer authority to levy a tax. Governments have a tendency to call things fees because that's more convenient for them. So that having been said, I am curious, specific to the police infrastructure. I understand how cars are associated with growth, but we already built the police station. We're paying it off now. Our voters authorized that debt. We're not expanding it. We're not making improvements to it. How can we justify charging a development impact fee to sustain what our voters already approved?
Excellent point. And that did remind me, I want to answer your question. The reason why it's 15 million is because that's the remaining debt. I'm pretty sure I'm correct on that. But to your point, it's a policy choice. We were asked to evaluate each of the infrastructure categories and figure out what could you do legally in terms of impact fees. And so the question was, or some of the discussions were, to your point, we do have a revenue source, so to speak, already dedicated to fund the police station, but this is a policy decision for you guys to make. You can certainly decide not to implement a police impact fee or just implement it for the vehicle component because you've got this bond issue. But legally, you could still collect the impact fee using the cost recovery approach.
I guess that gets to the crux of my question. And this is where the disconnect lies for me. This is development that we had already planned, the police department. This is infrastructure that we had already planned and approved that would be happening regardless of any growth in our city. So how do we make a connection to this project that's already been planned, approved, and executed and is currently being paid off and growth, which is the purpose of a development fee, is to offset associated costs of growth?
Let me give you another example. Let's say that we were doing a wastewater fee. You could make the same point if you built a 10 million gallon a day treatment center 6 years ago, but you're currently only utilizing 6 million of that, and there's 4 million gallons a day of excess capacity. You're fully within your rights to ask new development to buy in because you've provided that excess capacity to them, right? Regardless of whether it's going to happen or not, right? You still incurred this cost. And so it's so much costs so much per gallon to build that treatment plant. It's the same concept here. It's a little cleaner with utilities because it's a closed infrastructure system, whereas police is an open infrastructure system. But again, it gets down to policy of whether you want to collect that money and you think the juice is worth the squeeze versus, hey, we've already found a dedicated revenue sources. The voters spoke. We're just not going to implement it.
I appreciate that argument. I need to go on record and say that I'm not in alignment with it.
Fair enough.
So that's all. Thank you.
Member Prang.
Thank you for the presentation tonight. Few quick questions. Do we have any immediate surrounding jurisdictions that are impact fee free?
Good question.
I think Lone Tree maybe. We did a fee study for them and they never implemented it. I don't think because everything's through development agreements, or a lot of it's through development agreements there. I think they may be the only one.
Okay. Yeah, I saw Littleton listed in here and they're doing impact fees. Just, as we get into examining this issue further, and there are some that make the argument that impact fees hinder development and economic growth for a city. And so just wanting to have some better clarity on our immediate surroundings and who does and does not have it. Secondly, I'm not sure if this is a question for you or maybe more for city staff. So in using impact fees to help support what I did some research in, I think is called linkage programs. So like affordable housing issues, et cetera. Have you found the use of impact fees and the reduction of those fees to support those types of efforts becoming more of a trend or a strategy that cities are using to not? Okay. And I heard you clearly earlier that, cities are having to come up with that difference in cost. Right. And so are there any cities out there that have found great strategies to come up with that difference of cost and thus make this an effective way to reach a couple of goals?
Not really. I mean, we're doing quite a few affordable housing linkage fees around the country. I mean, that's most communities are dealing with it. I don't know. I mean, I know that there are some councils that have said, they're reducing or eliminating some fees to help with affordable housing.
Mhm.
But I would argue that it really doesn't it's de minimis, right? I'll give you an example. So we recently did a school impact fee in South Carolina, and this was before interest rates went up to 8%. It was at 4%. But the $15,000 impact fee at a 4% interest rate added $37 to the mortgage.
Okay.
Right? So when you look, on the surface, $15,000 sounds like a boatload of money, right? Increase the housing price by $15,000, but most people are getting a mortgage, 5, 10, or 50, or 20% down. And under these different scenarios, it was relatively modest increases. So you can imagine if you're talking about $1,000 increase to impact fees, or if you have no impact fees now and you're proposing a $3,000 increase, the actual cost on a monthly basis is quite small when you look at it from that perspective. So there are jurisdictions that have said they're reducing fees, but it's not making a difference in terms of the provision of affordable housing.
Got it. That's helpful. Thank
Just
you.
like in the recession in Florida, when they had moratoriums on impact fees, it didn't increase the building permits because we had a larger structural economic problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And I think I had one. Oh, so in the multimodal impact fee category, can those impact fees potentially be used, and this is where I think maybe more city staff might need to weigh in, or Ms. Niles, can these impact fees be used to support the multimodal components of the complete streets plans that we just signed IGAs for to reduce the cost to the city? Or is that not an allowable way to use impact fees?
I thought some of the complete street projects were on that list.
What's that?
I thought, as of the time we were doing the study, there were complete street projects on that list that we
Okay.
had.
So
if
it
there
would be
are more, we
included
could always
in-
revise it, but
Okay.
But that's the idea, is we're moving, and that's why we're using person trips instead of average daily vehicle trips, like we would do in a more greenfield situation, is the emphasis here is on moving people, not just vehicles.
Mhm.
So that's why because of the multimodal component, that's why we're using person trips.
I just didn't see those projects listed in here, and it's something that we're currently working on, and I'm assuming we'll get to within the next 5 years. So if there's a way to have the fees help reduce costs to the city for the overall project, I'd be interested in that. Thank you.
Mr. Bise, that was the one slide that we didn't have within the packet ourselves, so.
Which is what?
The list of infrastructure projects, multimodal, so. That's the reason why that question was being
You didn't
asked.
have, this slide was it? Oops.
Go, that one. That's the one slide we don't have within our packet, so.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. Remember, right?
I just had one
Sure.
more question. Has any city brought this to a vote to the people, as Member Ward was mentioning? So instead of doing a fee, it was like an official tax type thing, where the people voted on it to approve.
No, but we do have one client, Horry County, South Carolina, where Myrtle Beach is, where it was a referendum whether the general public wanted the county to pursue impact fees. That's the only case I know of that's ever been done, but impact fees have never been voted on by the public that I know of.
Go ahead, Member Russell.
Thank you. So, this $1.9 million is what we would be able to recoup. Was that per year, or was that the total
That's
over
the 10-year.
10-year?
You're talking about transportation, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That is a little bit discouraging to me, because the bottom line is what we've been raising right now, park and lieu fees are nothing too. And so I guess the one question that I have is about, the big thing is the transit-oriented development and changing industrial property to housing. So because we're losing lucrative money from the industrial area, is there a fee or tax? I'm not saying that I necessarily like fees either, because I don't. But I kind of feel like it is going to cost our city in the long run. And I don't know how we're going to recover the retail. In going to mixed use, there's no place for people to shop. We just keep putting more and more people in this city, and there is no place for people to shop, and they don't come to Englewood. So I think that's problematic also. So, I mean, this only recouping the 1.9 million was discouraging. You can comment.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there was somewhat of a question in there. I mean, this is fairly standard with cities at your stage of development, where in redevelopment situations where, you know, the net increase in new development is going to comprise a small percentage of your overall total population. A lot of times this is what we find. And so it's a value proposition of, is it worth it to get $1.9 million, but you've got to spend $46 million, right? But were you going to spend the 46 anyway? And in every little bit helps. I mean, those are questions that I can't answer for you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Bise, one last question on the Senate bill slide. I believe it's slide 4 for me, might be slide 5 for you. Where it talks about you can waive the impact fees for moderately priced residential. Do we have a definition for what that is?
No.
Okay.
You need to make that.
Okay,
that
so we
definition.
make that definition.
And that's
Okay.
always the rub.
All right. I think everyone else asked the questions that I had as well. So,
Yeah.
Any further questions for members of council? Deputy Director, is there any type of direction we need to give tonight in terms of what was presented?
Yes, thank you. We were looking for direction tonight, which could include several things at your pleasure. One could be an additional study session or more follow-up. One could be the drafting of an ordinance, and if you do direct a drafting of the ordinance, it could include all 4 of the proposed fees, 2 for police, 1 for parks, 1 for transportation, or it could include 1, 2, 3, whatever you'd like to see.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director. Anyone want to weigh in? I'd be happy to see everything that we discussed tonight as part of, well, I'd like to see it move forward in terms of just next steps. I'm not sure whether or not that requires a study session since we do have 1 council member missing. I'd wait to weigh, I may wait to weigh in on exactly what the next step would be, just depending on what other members of council want to do, but I would be happy to see all 4 come back. In terms of Member Ward's concern, I can understand where he's coming from in terms of just the infrastructure with the police department being built many years back, but I do also understand Mr. Bice's comment in terms of anytime that we are building infrastructure, we're building it for the future, or at least planning for the future, any future growth. So I do see the need of potentially including those type of fees in order to obviously take use of what the original plan was for that type of infrastructure. So I'd be happy to see it move forward, but obviously have a little bit more discussion regarding that item. So anyone else want to weigh in? Or anyone differ with my assessment? Go ahead, Member Wright.
We're also tonight discussing rate increases at the golf course, the Pirate Crows, and the rec centers also that will generate revenue for those areas also. I don't know how it'll help the police department, but I think we need to, before we move forward, see how that will impact those departments
Right.
also.
Go ahead, Member Wright.
So it just a thought, I mean, because that's on the agenda this evening also.
Correct. Thank you, Member Wright. Member Prang, and then Member Anderson, or Mayor Pro Tem.
Me
No,
first?
go ahead.
I see the value of continuing to move the conversation forward, and I'm interested in seeing all of the areas brought forward. I think that, our city has ongoing and continuing needs, and this is part of a funding matrix and mix of options that we can use to continue to fund our needs moving forward into the city. So I don't see, other than, the nuances of Member Ward's interpretation of what this actually is, I don't see that this is not something that the city would want to consider as in having the mix of funding our city's infrastructure.
Thank you, Member Praying. Mayor Pro Tem?
Um, well, I'm happy to see this continue forward for the sake of discussion, but I'm not 100% there, not convinced, especially at these the level of increases here. I think there's two things I'm concerned about. Number one is the potential that since every new project is going to generally be associated with tax increases already, I think this does strike me as potentially double dipping for those future projects where we'll have increased revenue anyway. And secondly is the impact that these fees could have on discouraging development. Yeah, so I'm not sold on it, not sold on it at these amounts. Would be happy to see it continue to be discussed, but not sure where I'm going to come down on the end.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think a study session might make sense for the next step then, in terms of this discussion. I see some nodding heads, yes. So I think a study session before we draft any type of ordinance for this. Deputy City Manager Dodd, so.
Mayor, if I could?
Sure.
Thank you. I do want to just note, you all passed these same impact fees, but at much higher increases for our water and sewer funds 2 years ago when we did the rate and fee study for that. Those are, much more substantial. And really, this is just a way to make developers pay their own way. Developers have had, essentially, if you look at the fees in comparison to other cities, a free ride in Englewood. So we're responding to council's request that we, make sure the development is paying its own way, so our current ratepayers and taxpayers don't bear that burden.
Right. Thank you very much, City Manager. But I think just understanding what that right level should be, taking into account those impact fees that we've done for our stormwater and sewer infrastructure, I think that may be the next step in order so we could get a holistic view of everything. So, all right, with that, Deputy City Manager, thank you very much for your time tonight. Mr. Bise, oh, there you are. Thank you very much for the presentation tonight, and thank you for making it, and glad to see you back in good health. So, and with that, we'll take a quick break and come back here in about 3 or 4 or 5 minutes or so we can kick off the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it works.
No, of course. Zoom?
My controls.
You need to get in the car. I don't have to finish this. We can go.
All right, everyone, thank you. We are now back. I call this meeting to order. If you're able to do so, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. City Clerk, if you could please take roll call.
Yes, good evening. Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Present?
Member Noonenkamp, Member Prang,
Present?
Member Russell,
Present.
Member Ward,
Present.
Member Wright,
Present?
Mayor Sierra.
Present.
6 present and 1 absent. The 1 absent is Councilmember Noonenkamp.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5. This is the minutes of the regular city council meeting from December 18, 2023. Any changes? Member Russell.
I have a correction to the vote on 11C2. I voted no on the Hampton Complete Streets, Old Hampton Complete Streets.
Thank you very much, Member Russell. You did. Can we make that correction, City Clerk? Perfect. Any other changes? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the city council meeting on December 18th with the change that Member Russell stated?
I move to approve the amended city council regular meeting minutes for Monday, December 18th.
Thank you, Member Russell. Could I get a second?
Second?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Prang,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Member Wright,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you. Nothing under agenda item 6. Moving us to recognition of scheduled public comment. The deadline to sign up to speak for scheduled public comment is Wednesday by 5 p.m. prior to the meeting through the city clerk's office. This is an opportunity for the public to address city council. There is an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. Council may ask questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue, and please limit your presentation to 5 minutes. Tonight, Member Prang will be giving a response to public comment. First up is Christopher Cordova, here to address council. Yeah, do you mind handing it to City Clerk? And Mr. Cordova, you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Please turn on your mic.
Should be a button with a star. It'll make the mic green. There we go. There you are. And just your name and your address, Mr. Cordova?
Hi, my name's Christopher. I'm not going to give my address. I'm here today to speak on the unsanitary bodily hygiene policy and the standards of behavior. This policy violates the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution in 2 respects. First, the policy improperly makes a personal attribute such as body odor a determinative factor in the city facility staff's enforcement of the policy. Because the policy's prohibition of offensive body odor is in no way restricted to instances of actual material disruptions, which are incompatible to city facility functions, the restriction impinges upon individual liberty and sanctions that which may not be sanctioned merely on the basis of body odor. Highlighted in yellow, quote, creating a nuisance to or impeding use of a city facility by others, end quote. Body odor bugs. Highlighted in pink, quote, may result in warning, immediate removal, and or removal/exclusion up to 90 days, end quote. This rule should be void for vagueness because the only indication within the policy as to what constitutes a nuisance is, quote, body odor bugs. Moreover, the policy neither contains nor refers to identifiable standards, thereby failing to provide adequate notice to citizens wanting or in some cases needing to conduct business in an Englewood city facility. Because this rule impinges upon individual liberty in an arbitrary and discriminatory manner without cause, justification, or reason, this rule violates the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. Secondly, since the city manager, Sean Lewis, enacted this rule with the explicit intention of restricting persons with body odor access to Englewood city facilities, such action violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Highlighted in blue, quote, these standards of behavior protect the rights and safety of visitors, employees, and volunteers, end quote. It does nothing of the sort. To the contrary, this policy serves to violate the rights of visitors. highlighted in green, quote, warning, removal, and exclusion for violation of these standards are supplemental to all other actions authorized by law, such as criminal charges, end quote. A violation of this rule is not criminal by nature, yet paragraph 2 of the purpose statement implies that failure to comply with the rule could result in criminal charges, presumably to arrest uncooperative individuals pursuant to the criminal trespass law. The difficulty with this conclusion is that CRS 18-4-504, third-degree criminal trespass, requires a voluntary act distinct from violation of this rule. You cannot trespass someone from public property that is open to the public while they are conducting legitimate business or engaged in activity that aligns with the mission of the facility unless they commit a crime. That a person found in violation of a rule may feel inclined to remain on the property does not thereby transfer the rule into criminal provisions. Basically, what this is an attack on homelessness. Any law or rule made by government must be narrowly tailored and viewpoint neutral. The rule is clearly not viewpoint neutral as it discriminates against the homeless for having body odor, something in which they have no control over as they are incapable of taking regular showers and having access to deodorant. Furthermore, what is offensive to some may not be offensive to others. In the 60s, some people found Black people to be offensive. But I think we can all agree that banning someone from public property based on the color of their skin, something in which they have no control over, just because some may be offended by their presence, is immoral and unlawful. Just as banning a homeless man with body odor, something he has no control over, just because some may be offended by his presence, is immoral and unlawful. So not only is this a violation of a homeless man or woman's civil rights protected under the 14th Amendment to conduct business on public property, but the city manager, Sean Lewis, drafted the standards of behavior policy with such generality that it risks ensnarement of anyone who walks through the door of an Englewood city facility in a net designed for others. This gives government too much power and discretion. If a public employee doesn't like someone or doesn't like their conduct, even if it's lawful, all they have to do is say, "You have body odor." And lastly, this is in violation of the First Amendment. In the 1943 case of Martin v. City of Struthers, the Supreme Court ruled the First Amendment includes freedom to receive speech as well as the freedom to speak. So we have a First Amendment right to access the library downstairs, body odor or not. I will end this with the 1886 case of Norton v. Shelby County. A unconstitutional act is not a law. It confers no rights. It imposes no duties. It affords no protection. It creates no office. It is in legal contemplation as inoperative, as though it had never been passed. That's all I got.
Mr. Cordova, thank you very much for your time tonight. Any questions? Member Wright.
Hello, Mr. Cordova. Thank you for being here. You gave a Colorado revised statute. Could you please repeat that to me?
Sure. It is CRS 18-4-504.
18-4-0.
504.
504. Okay. There's a reason you're here this evening. Can you give me an example when this standard of behavior has been enacted? Do you have a name and can you tell me what happened, please?
To my knowledge, I don't know. I know that the policy has been in existence for a little over a year. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's signed
So
here
I
October
don't
20th.
know of it being enforced, but I just want to let you guys know about this. I know you all are very well versed in the Constitution since you all swore an oath to it, but I encourage you to do your due diligence, look up the 14th Amendment to refresh your memory because I'm trying to help you guys and I'm trying to help the homeless. If you guys were to enforce this, it could cost the taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars in civil rights lawsuits.
Mm-hmm. And then one more question. You said Martin versus...
Yeah, that is the 1943 case of Martin versus City of Struthers. Struthers.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming.
All right. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cordova, for coming tonight. I'm just curious on this. You've only highlighted one here in yellow. Or is this the only one you think meets or actually violates these constitutional provisions? Or
Yeah, that's the only one that I saw.
okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All right, with no further questions, Mr. Cordova, thank you for your time tonight.
thanks.
Up next is Gary Kozacek here to address council. Good evening, Mr. Kozak. You could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Yeah, Gary Kozacek, Englewood, Colorado. By the law, anybody can even live outside of Englewood and still have the rights to come forward and speak. Good evening, council. I hope you had a nice holiday and New Year's. I've got some voice problems because I'm going to have some surgery done. City council, you all took an oath. The new members just took it, but you guys took an oath also to uphold the city charter and the Constitution of the city, as well as the Constitution of the state of Colorado. You swore to that oath and that you would maintain that, and that's why you're there. What is the city council purpose? There's city residents that are here to help oversee the process of the city government and represent the public at large. You set up boards and commissions to help you as a sounding board so that another group of people could sit there and talk about things and then present it to you guys so you have a better idea and a better feel of what goes on within the city. That's your responsibility. And I was a city council member at one time. You have a judicial body that oversees all the financing. I hear on the street that we have a problem with our judge and that you didn't want to pay him more money. And some of it is that officers can't even make it to here. And that's because we're short officers on the street. For every new apartment house, you have to have at least 2 officers. But did you consider illness? Did you consider vacations? There's a lot of officers that end up having to get paid overtime because they don't have enough officers to precipitate what's is the needs on the street. I brought up the boards and commissions, and they also have to abide by the Constitution and support it. The city staff, as well, has to represent the Constitution and support it. I required the following, was a Cora request on that I'm working on a story. I made the Cora request for my story, and I asked for any independent emails, intergovernmental emails within the city management, city council, and boards and commissions. There is a law of how quick that has to be returned to me, but it took over 2 weeks. I got the emails, and I got the Cora response, and it showed where the city manager and city attorney received communication, but they didn't show anything that they responded to any of it. And furthermore, I had areas that were blocked out of people that claims that I didn't have the rights to know what those people said. It's intergovernmental. It was within the city of Englewood and communication between boards and directors, as well as another group of boards. And why was that blocked out? Really nice question. You're the overseer to seeing that things are done properly. Like I said, there was no responses back from the city attorney and city manager. And I talked about the reductions of the names that were blocked out. And this all has to do with city business. Now, the Sunshine Law. You better take a closer look because your boards and commissions are also required to adhere to the Sunshine Law. If you guys leave this meeting and walk out in the parking lot and there's 4 or more of you within a group right there, it has to be recorded. No matter what you're talking about, because you're leaving in the inference that you're communicating outside the governing body and the recorded sessions. And I know for a fact that this occurred in the Library Commission meeting, that a group of people got together and had some more discussions about what was going on in the library board. and that's been looked into for a violation of the Sunshine Law. It happens to all of us. I was on city council. I know all
Mr.
about
Kozak,
that.
your 5 minutes are up.
Right.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Kozak. Any questions for members of council? Go ahead, Member Russell.
So, could you bring it to a point? I mean, I know you've said several things, but did you have one thing that you wanted us to do as a result of your conversation with us?
You've got to oversee, you're here to represent the citizens and oversee the function of the city. And what the city manager and city attorney, they're the ones that you have the authority to control and oversee that they're doing it properly. If they're violating the constitutional laws and stuff, that comes back onto you because you're the one that's supposed to oversee it. And I was only looking for a story, and I got shortchanged, but now I'm hearing that this is happening a lot.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it, Mr. Kozak.
Thank you.
Mr.
Anybody
Kozak,
else?
with no further questions, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Up next is Doug Cohn, an Englewood resident, here to address council regarding history. Good evening, Mr. Cohn.
Good evening. Doug Cohn, 3051 South Marion Street. As the new year starts, there are many things to be thankful for. City of Englewood, I want to thank you all. I want to start by the follow-up on that bus stop issue over on Girard and Lincoln. I'm not sure how it got moved from the corner up that hill, that steep hill, into the shadow of the building, but that was a dangerous change that was made. People with limited mobility had a very hard time getting to the new bus stop. Thank you, Member Russell and Manager Lewis, and whoever it was who got the shovel and dug that post out of the ground and planted it back down the hill. Thank you for caring for the seniors and the people with disabilities from the Malley Center and the Simon Center and Orchard Place. Thank you for fixing the problem. Then I want to thank the City of Englewood for working with Historic Englewood to create the walking tour brochures. People are learning about our historic places. These brochures, 3 brochures have been made so far, and we're making plans to do some more. As part of this program, small plaques have been placed at each location with a QR code so that people just walking down the street and they see that little plaque, they can learn the history of the spot. It's so cool to have your phone tell you the history story. Then I want to thank Chris Hargath and the Communications Department for continuing the Englewood Moments in History videos. If you've not seen the newest one, it's a great video about one of our key industries. The key industries in Englewood's past. General Ironworks was the largest employer for years, and it was a factory that invented new things to make the world a better place. If you have a chance, go to YouTube, type in the title Englewood Moments in History. There are 30 different movies that give a good spread of our ideas about our history. Then I want to thank the City of Englewood for working with the Historic Society to create a local history museum. Yeah, I'm so excited about this. A museum has been our vision since the Society came into existence. We're currently renovating the Museum of Outdoor Art Space and are looking forward to opening in March. Colacting Music donated 10 big showcases to us, and Universal Music sold us 2 at a very good price. People have donated money and lots of effort to make it happen. We're really thankful about that. We're moving our archives out of the ground level storage space into our new area, and that work will be done by the end of January. Although most likely that work will be done by 1 o'clock this coming Saturday afternoon. We've almost got the ground level place ready for the police to take back over. The first exhibit is going to be the history of Cinderella City. Thank you to the city for retaining the Cinder Alley sign. For those of you who are not old enough or live someplace else when Cinderella City was here, you need to come and have a look at the spread on that. It's going to be cool. And for those of you all who remember Cinder Grove City because you like went there and shopped, or went there here, when this was the May DNF store, 3 stories of clothes, I think you're going to be very impressed. Anyway, thank you.
Mr. Cohn, thank you very much for your time tonight. Member Russell.
Mr. Cohn, thank you very much. I do have a question. So is the bus stop on Girard back where it belongs?
Yes, it is.
Yay.
Okay, thank you.
The bus stop and the bench got moved back down the hill to the flat space.
Good.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
And I'm not sure how that got moved up the hill, but somebody loaded it on a little cart and brought it back down the hill.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Member Wright.
Hi, Mr. Cohen. Happy New Year.
Well, thank you.
Did you say it's Englewood Moments in History on YouTube?
Yes. Yeah, you go to the YouTube website, and then there's 30 different movies that Chris Harguth and the communications department working with the Historic Society has made. Yeah, it's called Englewood Moments in History.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Member Russell, did you have anything else, or we're good?
Oh.
Perfect. Nope, I think we're all good.
thank you.
Mr. Cohn, thank you very much for your time tonight. Happy New Year to you as well. So, moving on next is Marjorie Winters here to address council regarding Judge Jefferson. Good evening, Ms. Winters. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Yes, my name is Marjorie Winters. It's 3333 South Lincoln, here in Englewood. My name is Marjorie Winters, and I am born and raised here in Englewood. So is my family. I am truly upset that someone is trying to take Judge Jefferson off of the bench because he is a man true to his work. He truly cares to help his people, not throw the books at them, and I would like to speak upon his behalf and say he belongs on the bench. He does his job right and he is not one to discriminate. He is not a crooked judge. He shows he cares and wants to help his people do right, not fall. He offers resources to help oneself. I myself have stood in front of him charged with homelessness, trash and trespassing. I was homeless and I didn't have the money or the resources to get help. Judge Joe Jefferson helped me instead of charging me with so much court cost and fees. He gave me a community service to help me pay my dues. He also gave me resources for housing, food, and health, which helped me tremendously. He also helped me by letting me do my community service with Regan Benson, who is our homeless advisor. She has a nonprofit organization that helps the homeless. She would help us with our appointments, transportation to the doctors, housing, and etc. She helped us not because she had to, but because she cared and wanted to do so. Thanks to Jefferson, I was introduced to Regan Benson and got the help I needed. I am working with Regan once more because of Sheridan for getting into the trash and gathering things that I could sell. I'm being criminalized for recycling other people's garbage, and other people are not. They're being applied for it. The judge in Sheridan is very discriminated against the homeless, and I find him racist against Mexicans, homeless, blacks, and all women. The judge in Sheridan offered no resources for the homeless community, so I ask you please to give Judge Jefferson the respect he deserves from this city and council. I am no longer homeless. I have been housed for over 2 years now. I have my daughter back in my life, and I'm doing so much better, thanks to Judge Jefferson. And I just wanted to tell him and Regan, thank you both. I also had a friend that wanted to be here tonight, but he cannot because of warrants for being charged with the same thing, and he's afraid to be arrested. I have one other thing that I'd like to read that Ms. Regan asked me to do so. Again, my name is Marjorie Winters, and here, what you are going to remember when you hear my name. I am a kind, compassionate, forgiving, selfless gorgeous, understanding, thoughtful, sympathetic, and loving human being. And I am absolutely gorgeous inside and out. I matter, and I'm a mother and a daughter to those who love me and care about me. I love back unconditionally. If I saw you suffering or struggling, I would help you. And I'd ask you what I could do to help, because that's the kind of person I am, and you should want to be more like me. My name is Marjorie Winters. Thank you.
Ms. Winters, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time tonight, Ms. Winters. Ms. Winters, 1 second, just Member Wright has a question for you.
Thank you, Ms. Winters, and yes, you do matter. Thank you for coming here. I forgot what I was going to ask. You touched my heart. How many encounters with Judge Jefferson have you had?
I've had a total of 3.
Okay. And was it with their, and I don't know the name of it, their navigator that has helped you with outreach programs and that type of thing?
Jefferson is one that advised the housing and places that I could go to get help.
Okay. And you still live in Englewood?
And I'm housed now. I have a place to live now.
Okay. And are you receiving wraparound services?
Yes.
Okay. Through Englewood?
Yes.
Okay. Well, congratulations and keep up the fantastic work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Any other questions for members of council? Ms. Winters, thank you very much for coming tonight, and thank you very much for being where you are today. Thank you. Up next is Regan Benson here to address council regarding city resources. Good evening, Ms. Benson. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
You already know my name. It's Regan Benson. That is an amazing human being. Take note, everyone. This coming week, Thursday to be exact, there's an individual on the Englewood court docket with 25 separate municipal cases. I see you all looking down. It's crazy to even the most sane person what Englewood is trying to accomplish by criminalizing homelessness. It's pure insanity to even contemplate that this is a good use of taxpayer resources. I want to put it on the record that I expect to see your elected judge fully compensated above market value. Why? Because Joe Jefferson is by far a commodity to justice, not a revenue stream to justice, Mr. Ward. That's right. The courts are not a revenue stream for this city. And I don't ever want to hear you say that Jefferson is not doing his job ever again. Do I make myself crystal clear on that? If I hear you chastising Judge Jefferson again on his job performance, I'm going to be back on the record every single time setting you straight, because you don't know what you're talking about. And it appears you think you're an expert on how the courts run here in Englewood. Well, you're not, and you should contemplate not talking just to hear yourself talk with the goal of sounding important. I've witnessed and have been a very active spectator of this court system in recent years, while working with the unhoused population to meet goals, and we've been very successful because of Judge Jefferson. The Englewood courts has become a well-oiled machine. And that costs money, Mr. Ward. Justice costs money. And this city, in its arrogant and inhumane quest to criminalize the homeless, is costing taxpayers big bucks. How about you quit passing ordinances designed to target the homeless? Have you ever thought about that cost savings? No, you haven't, because your allegiance is to force to solve homelessness. It's ludicrous, and it's not working. Mr. Lewis, I'm speaking to you as well. Judge Jefferson is head over heels in comparison to other municipal judges in, number one, his demeanor and real understanding of issues plaguing a community that is purely a public health crisis. Number two, he's ensuring due process for the accused, and that is saving this city from very costly litigation. Number three, this city government and its voting populace expect the courts to solve homelessness through criminalization by way of a judge and a part-time court navigator. Does anyone, anyone at all understand those implications? You should be at the very least increasing the court's budget on this far-fetched utopia and paying a good judge good money to meet those demands. Give the man his raise in the same equitable fashion that you've given other department heads in this city that apparently only serve as revenue generators to this council. Next, I want to touch on what I've put on the record here in the past, specific to your cozy and unethical arrangement you have with eArts. There's no question now what this majority council is doing with that contract arrangement, and it's rooted 100% in nepotism to further personal relationships and agendas with the church. Miss Noonan Camp, a vote you were required to recuse yourself from, allowing eArts, a nonprofit, free use of taxpayer-owned facilities that they get to generate revenue off of for the purpose of holding church that you attend and promote. Here's the answer to attempt to remedy this situation, one that I'm certain the city attorney will appreciate. Englewood City Charter, Chapter 11, Code of Ethics, challenges for conflict of interest. Study up and pay close attention to the words, any person may challenge. That's any person. Next, I want to touch on Englewood's partnership and $1.4 million contribution to taxpayer dollars to Tri-City's homeless conglomerate that's meeting out of the public view. I emailed Mike Sangren to ask him if I could go to your policy working group meetings, and he told me no. You're making policy behind closed doors. We know how government does this to get around transparency of shuffling hundreds of millions of dollars in one-time funds.
Ms. Benson, thank you very much for your time tonight. Members of council, do you have any questions for Ms. Benson? Seeing none, Ms. Benson, thank you for your time tonight. And with that, that concludes scheduled public comment. We'll move to unscheduled public comment. We have 5 speakers here tonight. Up first is Pam Peak, here to speak about homelessness. Good evening, Ms. Peak. If you could just state your name and your address or cross street.
Yes, Pam Peak, and I'm right between the 2 Hamdens on Sherman. Okay, I'm here to speak to you as a parent and as the mother of a homeless person in Englewood. First of all, my son has been arrested many times for sleeping in the park, for sleeping on the sidewalk, for having an open container in the park. He did have one possession charge for marijuana, so he came in on 2 failures to appear. My first complaint is that when he is arrested, all of his belongings never come back to him. They are disposed of. And this seems to be, I spent last week interviewing homeless people, and I talked to 11 different people, and this is what happens to their stuff too. It is clearly thrown out. And I think somebody needs to look at that, because there ought to be a way. These people have so little, and then when they get out of jail, they have to start all over again, which is a burden in terms of, well, I'm 80 years old, and I keep providing bedrolls. I feel like I'm supplying half of the homeless in Englewood with bedrolls, sleeping bags, boots, jeans. The next issue that I would like to comment on is the public bathrooms in the parks are closed in Englewood, denying these people a place to pee and poop, okay? And this is a basic right that we should all have. The second thing, I would like to tell you something a little funny here. Probably 3 weeks ago, I came down to Broadway, and I was on the south side of King Soopers, and I had some boots for my son. They're size 12, they're huge. So, and I had jeans in there and a sweater. And I was tired of carrying the bag. I'm 80 years old, and I threw it up over my shoulder. I was stopped by an Englewood policeman, and he says to me, I need some ID. And I won't quote exactly what I said, but I indicated to him that, first of all, he needed to step back. And I did say to him, I beg your pardon. I never produced an ID, but I went up one side of him and down the other. He thought I was homeless, and I told him, you're part of the problem then, not part of the solution. The people who are homeless, they might be out there for one reason, it may change. But point in fact, they're treated badly, and I think they are criminalized. This kid is never, he's 47, he's a man, he's not a kid. And they get the same treatment at Swedish Hospital. He got hit by a mail truck. They treated him and released him. He has a head injury, and he has missed appointments because he got arrested Christmas Day. He went outside my apartment to have a smoke. And I am tired of the criminalization of these people. I don't think it's necessary. And I really am beginning to wonder myself, is this just a revenue stream? Because where is he going to get a pair? Where's he going to get money to pay?
Ms. Peak, I need to stop you there.
I'm
Your
sorry.
3 minutes are, your 3 minutes are up, Ms. Peak.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Wright Member Wright has a question for you. Go ahead,
Yes,
Member Wright.
Hi, Ms. Peaks. When the officer stopped you, did you happen to get that officer's information?
No, because when I got done with him, I was embarrassed because I told him the last thing I said to him is I raised 3 kids and I would just as soon slap you into the middle of next week as have you talk to me like that again.
Okay.
And I told him clearly, you don't approach an 80-year-old woman like that.
And because you had a bag over your shoulder, he assumed that you were homeless.
It was a white garbage bag from the kitchen that I put the stuff in, because it's easier to carry that way.
Right.
But it was humorous,
Okay. Yeah. Not at the moment, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Peak, just a quick question for you. On your first complaint, regarding the, once arrested, the belongings will never go back to the individual. Did you say that you surveyed other homeless people as well?
Yes, I did.
And same thing happened with them?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that. And
You're
then
welcome.
stick around to the end. I have an answer for the second complaint, so without any further questions, thank you very much for your time,
Okay,
Ms. Peak.
thank you.
Up next is Sandy Kettlehut, here to speak as well. I can't understand what the reason is. Sorry about that. Good evening, Ms. Kettlehut.
Good evening. My cross streets are Race and Eastman. My name is Sandra Kettlehut.
Thank you.
I'm speaking this evening regarding agenda item 9A1. I do not feel that the citizens of Englewood should be reimbursing any council members involved in the recall. And I do not feel that the council members involved in the recall should be voting on this agenda item. They should be excusing themselves. The recall election results did not accurately show what should have happened. Nathaniel Sierra was not recalled by only 192 votes. 547 signed the recall petition, but 327 did not vote, more than enough to have recalled you. Chelsea Neunenkamp was not recalled by only 29 votes. 411 signed the recall petition, but 171 did not vote. Again, more than enough to have recalled her. Joe Anderson was not recalled by 254 votes. 680 signed the recall petition, but 363 did not vote. Again, more than enough to have recalled you. In my opinion, the recall election was set up on October 3rd by staff as a deliberate attempt to confuse voters. The blue books came out right about the same time as the October 3rd election, creating this confusion. After the election, I became aware of many voters that meant to vote but did not because they were confused. The election should have been held in September before general election materials went sent out. Our documents were supposed to be turned in by July 6th. There was ample time for that. The city has already spent more than enough on the election that the citizens requested. There was an alternate, less expensive choice that you rejected. The city and the council members made the cost of the election their main talking point and nothing else. The citizens should not be responsible for any money spent by a council member for the recall. That was their choice to defend their position. Should the citizens be reimbursed for their expenses? June 4th will be here in no time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kelhut. Any questions for Ms. Kelhut? Ms. Kelhut, I do have one question. What was the alternative to the way that we ran the election?
We were presented a ballot box method, and it was presented here in council. Go back and look at your previous meetings. I don't remember what it was exactly called, but it was a ballot box with different colored things, and it was very cheap. It was like $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000.
I think that potentially was the free version that they suggested. I don't think that
Excuse
there was
me?
a cost to it. Was there a cost associated with that version?
I don't remember exactly. Let's put it this way. It didn't cost what you guys chose to spend the money on.
The 138,000.
Yeah, which
Okay.
you all focused on because that was not the issue we were.
Thank you very much, Ms.
Addressing.
Calhoun. Any other questions? Thank you for your time tonight.
You're welcome.
Up next is Kathy Naughton with no topic given. Good evening, Ms. Naughton. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Good evening. Kathy Naughton, I'm on Jason and Union. If the city backs a council member with funding to maintain a seat on the council, why wouldn't it also back the citizens who generated a recall with comparable funding? Otherwise, it looks like the city shows bias when they should be remaining neutral. I also believe this sets a precedent that in the future will make a recall impossible, inevitably taking away the voice and the legal rights of the citizens. Since a council member will know recall costs are covered, what is the incentive to search for more economical printing or mailing large quantities of information to counter the recall, or for paying people to hang flyers or generating slick, expensive brochures? On another note, I was very disappointed by this glossy mailer that was sent out conveniently right before the election by the city. It neglects to mention some of the important things the citizens have been questioning, such as the increase in the size of the bulk plane, which would allow new development much closer encroachment on the edge of a property, possibly overshadowing a smaller house by blocking the center of view. It does not mention the future building will not require parking on the premises. It does not mention the increased definition of a household size. Design standards, as listed in here. The brochure states Englewood now has design and appearance regulation for new homes. I'm not seeing new builds that maintain the character of the existing neighborhoods. It also states that Code Next does not allow for duplexes, triplexes, or any other multi-unit buildings to be constructed in R1. What are courtyard houses, which are permitted in R1? Yes, they're separate dwellings, but the density is such that they may as well be attached triplexes or quadplexes. There's no mention of courtyard housing in R1 neighborhoods in this mailer. It fails to bring up the big concerns that have been brought to the attention of the city by the people who attend these meetings and are paying attention to what's going on. It does not adequately inform the general population of the full truth of Code Next. This previous flyer that was sent out says, "You spoke, we listened." I think that's true, City. I think you did listen to all our objections and the things that would really inform the public, and you managed to leave it off this flyer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Naughton, for your time tonight. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Up next is Jan Weipert with no topic given. Good evening, Ms. Weipert. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Good evening, Jan Weipert, Federal and Bellevue, and thanks for the Pledge of Allegiance. I appreciated that. I still like to see a short invocation. So I came, and I really was coming about the reimbursement. My feeling is this: if you guys were all listening up there to us and responding to us in a respectful manner, no recall would have ever happened. It was the lack of paying attention and the lack of response that there were 4 people that were being recalled. Steve Ward was the next one in line and came real close, but he at least has listened and made some attempt to pay attention to us. So no, I don't think money should be reimbursed. But that's that. So let's look at a couple things tonight. I wanted to say homelessness. I worked for the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless for 18 years. I worked for them. My heart goes out to them. I'm amazed at this young woman here because she now is on the flip side of getting her life together. And thank God. There are so many other people out here that we know as parents, as friends, as neighbors, as relatives. And it's hard for them. It's hard for us. And there's a fine line on what we're going to do. One of the things I would say when we're talking about odor and bugs can be a health hazard, sorry. Bugs. And one of the suggestions I was going to have is to look at Denver Public Library. They actually were closed down for quite a while because of the bug infestation that came in with the homeless. So one of the things I saw on the internet, interestingly enough, was a defogger that people had go over them to get rid of insects and things. So I wouldn't like to see that, but I do think there are potential issues there. But you know, the homeless, my heart goes out, and Judge Jefferson is a beacon of hope because he is a positive, ethical person. What's happening in our country right now is we have people that are sexual predators. They don't tell us what's going on. They're hiding the truth. The truth is important, and above everything, we should have free and fair elections, and we should have recordings of all meetings. They shouldn't be hidden, and people that are saying things behind closed doors should be taken off these boards and commissions. BH is one of them. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wiper, for your time tonight. Any questions for Ms. Wiper? Seeing none, thank you for your time tonight, Ms. Wiper. And final, last on the list is C.N. Dickerson here with no topic given. Good evening, Ms. Dickerson. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
I forgot my glasses. I'm going to have trouble reading this. C.N. Dickerson, District 1. There should be no reimbursement. Just because the CRS says may does not mean should, or that the dollars listed were for the recall. Where are the invoices and the materials showing the recall message? I did not receive any door hanger. No one I know did. The only thing we saw that even related to the recall from Mr. Sierra was the sign topper. Even with invoices and actual mailings and door hanger materials, there is a presumption that all mailings within the campaign period are for the re-election. I see this as a conflict of interest. Member Sierra voted to push the recall so close to the now election, obscuring election campaigning by claiming it was recall messages. Do not approve this reimbursement. As a citizen, I should not have to have my tax dollars given to Sierra because 45+% of the citizens exercise their constitutional and charter rights to recall. No subject of the recall should be able to vote on this reimbursement. This is the only mailing I got, and it was strictly campaign re-election material. It says so. And we have no evidence whatsoever that any of your listed expenses were for the recall, except maybe the sign topper.
Anything else, Ms. Dickerson? Thank you for your time, Ms. Dickerson. Any questions for Ms. Dickerson? Seeing none, thank you for your time. And that concludes unscheduled public comments. Member Prang, the floor is all yours when you're ready to go.
Thank you for that. A lot of material covered tonight and a lot of passion in what people brought forward. So I just wanted to thank each and every one of you who did come forward to speak tonight, to share your thoughts and your opinions, to give direction of how you think things should go with council votes, even if those votes don't end up being aligned completely with where you're at. It's just amazing to me to see that we have a community of members who continue to come forward and share their thoughts. I probably will not go through every single person that spoke tonight, but I did want to make a few pointed comments from a few speakers. Mr. Cordova, thank you so much for coming forward and reminding us of our responsibilities to the Constitution. I would certainly hope that our standards of behavior that are posted are not implemented in such a way that it would ever purposely discriminate against someone who is homeless. I understand your concerns of body odor. What I know of our city staff so far in my short tenure is that the intention would not be to discriminate, but maybe rather to just make sure that we have environments that are safe and welcoming to all members that are coming into our city buildings. But I do appreciate your caution to us, and I think full council appreciates that. Mr. Kozacek, I'm sorry if I got that incorrect. I have concerns about what you brought forward on the sunshine laws. I agree with you. I think that's a worthy caution and one that we can look into further and inquire if we do have boards and commissions that are, having members having private conversations. That's not okay, and we do need to address it. I do want to clarify, as I'm sure you know, it's only breaking the law if you're discussing business pertaining to the city or that particular commission or board. So obviously we would need to do a little more digging there, but thank you for bringing that forward to our attention. Mr. Cohn, thank you always for your passion for history of the city. We have lots of opportunity to discuss moving forward and what the city should continue to look like, but you are just you play an imperative role in the city to keep history in front of us and remind us of where we came from and remind us of the beauty of what made Englewood as special as it is, and hoping that we can continue that feel as we move forward and make the decisions toward progress within the city. Always appreciate a positive comment as well, and the thoughts of gratitude. I'm sure city staff appreciate hearing those thoughts. Let's see. Miss Winters, I too, as Councilmember Wright spoke to, was very moved by what you had to say. I think it takes a lot of strength and vulnerability to come up here and share your life story, and it's part of what makes a difference. I'm not sure about what rumors have or haven't been swirling out there around Judge Jefferson. I want to assure you, at least my intent in asking questions about his salary were more based in process. Let's just understand, and I think one of our other public commenters mentioned, making sure that we have fair processes for other city staff as well as the judge, and that it's an equitable process. And I do think a lot of the discussion generated surrounded what that process is and the structure that we can use to make appropriate decisions. But I do think that your comments and several other public comments tonight, just speaking to the passion that you feel of how Judge Jefferson really cares for this community and the improvements that you've seen in the court systems and how you feel less targeted and discriminated against are really important for us to hear. So thank you so much for being brave to share your story with us tonight. And let's see. I think that is mostly what I have for commentary. Regarding the several comments that were made about reimbursing or not for Mayor Sierra's request that I don't believe is going to be discussed tonight. I hear everyone's concerns. I do want to share my personal opinion, and it will come up more in our discussion when we do get a chance to have the conversation together as council. But I do think that we have to keep things fair for everyone. And while some people may view that constituents having the right to run a recall election and ask of the city to spend their monies in running that special election on behalf of the petitions that were filed for the recall. Similarly, Mayor Sierra has rights as a citizen of the city to make the request that he's making. And so I don't think that we should elevate one person's right over another, but we should have the tough conversation. So I do appreciate the words that you have brought forward tonight and your thoughts on that, and I hope that our conversation around that will be robust when the time comes. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Prang. Go ahead, Member Ward.
Mayor, I do have one council request in response to my constituent, Mr. Kozak's Cora. If I could get a copy of the documents that were provided and a timeline of the request. If Mr. Kozak has not been provided with the privilege log advising him of the purpose of the redactions in the documents, I believe that would be helpful to the process as well. He may not have requested that, but it would be useful to know what was redacted and why. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ward, Member Wright, and then Member Russell.
I have a couple council requests. One, the Tri-Cities, as to why the meetings are not open. Ms. Regan mentioned that she was told that she would not be welcome in that meeting. I'd like to know why, especially we have 3 cities involved in that. Those meetings should absolutely be open to everybody. And the other one, Ms. Peaks was saying that her son, along with others, had the belongings. They lost their belongings when arrested. I would like to know that process, and if it's not a process where the belongings are taken and put in holding at the police station, something needs to change. That is everything in the world to these people, and it is our responsibility to make sure it's cared for like it's a bag of diamonds. So something needs to be done about the process or something. So those are my 2 requests, please.
Thank you, Member Wright. I had that one as well. So, Member Russell, go ahead.
Thank you. So actually, I think I appreciate Councilmember Ward's request, and I would like to make sure it's a council request, that all council will get that information. I do have, thank you, Ms. Peak, for coming and sharing with us tonight. I know that it's difficult, and I have some concerns about the report of how she was treated. And I think that we need to get the information on that if we can, because I just, not just her, I want to make sure it's not happening to other people as well. And I will say that the reimbursement is on the agenda tonight, and that will be discussed. And it's been pulled off the consent agenda item, and there will be some questions asked. So I appreciate your coming forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. I think we covered just about everything here. Ms. Peak, I did want to give you an answer to the second complaint, which is why the public bathrooms are closed for the winter. And Director Underhill or City Manager Lewis, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think our piping is winterized, so we have to close the bathrooms during the winter. I've gotten that complaint from many residents as well, that once, during the winter, unfortunately, playtime just ends because someone needs to use the bathroom, and so that's the current issue. But City Manager Lewis, is that true for all bathrooms within the city?
It is true, and we do have portalets that are placed in those parks when the bathrooms are closed.
That's correct, and I know that Bates at least has a bathroom in the parking area that is currently not being used by construction by Excel. So I think that's it. But yeah, these should all be council requests. Go ahead, Member Wright.
Is there a way we can look into for a porta potty in the area where it's a high traffic area for the homeless, maybe? I think we all know those areas, and this may, and we may have to ask the courts, are those that are well versed in some of the tickets that people get, but it may reduce the amount of those tickets, and look if there's a possibility of a porta potty in those areas that are high traffic areas where a bathroom is not easily accessible. The formerly known as the duck pond is top of mind for me in that area, I think, so that we can make something accessible for people and then maybe reduce, urinating in public tickets, and those type of things where we could try and help out a little bit.
Thank you, Member Wright.
Just an idea, thought there.
Member Wright, is it okay if we make that a council request as well? All right, perfect. All right, anyone else? Perfect, and that concludes response to public comments. Does anybody need a break, or are we good to go straight to consent agenda? Yeah, sure. We'll take a 5-minute break if we can come back at 8:10. Is that fine? Perfect. All right, thank you, everyone. Members of council, if you could please be seated. All right, everyone, we are now back. We're moving on to agenda item 9. This is consent agenda. We did have a request to remove 3 of them, 9A1, 9A2, and 9B3. Are there any others that we need to remove? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9B1 and 2 and 9C1?
I move to approve 9B1 and 2 and 9C1.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Prang. Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Prang,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Member Wright,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to 9A1. This is the reimbursement of recall election expenditures by Othaniel Sierra. Just FYI, this is an item that we did need to remove for consent agenda. I do plan on recusing myself on this vote. The other aspect is that I'm asking council if we could table this item until possibly next week. I believe we meet next Tuesday, so that would be what, the 16th? So, but go ahead, Member Russell.
I'm not sure next week will work for me. I may be out of town. Depends on the weather. I mean, if the weather is going to be bad, then I probably won't be out of town, but if the weather's going to be okay, I will be.
Okay. Let's. I'm going to ask for a motion to table this until the 16th, Member Russell, but we'll chat and just find out whether or not you're going to be in person next week, or if you're going to be able to attend it. I'm not sure if we do a date uncertain because we're going to talk about it on Wednesday in terms of setting it on the agenda. I like to put it on the agenda for 16, but I also will take into account the fact that you possibly may not be in person.
Do you know what annoys me? Is you will exchange one council member for another council member.
Member Russell, I'm stating that we will not be taking this vote without you. So I would like to table this item until Tuesday, January 16th. Can I get a second? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just had a
Mayor Pro Tem.
question.
Yeah, go ahead, Mayor.
Why not the 15th? We haven't.
No, I think we have MLK next Monday, so
Oh, okay.
Tuesday, yes. So next Tuesday, we're actually, the regular meeting's on Tuesday, the 16th. That's the reason for it.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Go
So-
ahead, Member Wright, go ahead.
So it will be tabled with the understanding, we are waiting until we have full council here to do this, correct?
Yes, I will wait until there's full council. If one of us is missing next week, then we will
Then
table it
table
until
again.
the next meeting.
Can we
Perfectly
amend the
fine with that.
motion to reflect that? Can we
Uh,
amend the motion that we will table it unless, and then
Table
we
with the full council?
table it to when we can have a full council?
Are we able to do that with instead of date uncertain or anything like that? I'm perfectly fine waiting on this, so.
Yes, if there can be a friendly amendment, if that's acceptable to
Okay.
council.
I'm fine with it, so. Go ahead, Member
I'll
Russell.
second that amended.
The second, the friendly amendment?
The friendly amendment, yes.
I appreciate that. And I mean, if, I will know ahead of time if.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you,
Thank you.
Member Russell. Any further comments on this or any further questions before voting? All right, seeing none, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Praying,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Member Wright,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra. Let the record show 6 ayes.
Sorry about that. Moving on to 9A2, this is Council Bill 2. This is the mill levy amendment emergency ordinance and
Jenny Nolan.
Jenny Nolan. Oh, started off the year on the wrong foot. Sorry about that, Ms.
No
Nolan.
worries, no worries.
Thank you very much. If you could just give us a little bit of information on this mill levy amendment.
Yes, and I'm here on behalf of Jackie Love, Director of Finance. She's not able to be here this evening. Tonight is the first reading of this emergency ordinance to amend the 2023 debt service mill levy for the property taxes collected in 2024. The second reading will be scheduled sometime tomorrow in order to certify our revised mill levy rate to Arapahoe County by Wednesday, January 10th. The change in the mill levy rate is due to temporary reduction in the assessed property valuations based on the Senate Bill 2023B-001 concerning a reduction in the 2023 residential property taxes that was passed by the Colorado General Assembly during a special legislative session that took place after the November 23 election. This legislation reduces the residential assessment rate. The general obligation bond debt service for the police headquarters is $2,233,000 and $300, and the estimated amount collected from the property tax mill levy is $2,250,000. Currently, the 2.1 mill levy that was approved back in October of 2023 needs to be increased to 2.182 in order to generate the $2,250,000 needed for the debt service payment due to this assessed property valuation reduction. The general government mill levy rate remains the same at 5.88. However, the property tax revenue estimate decreases from 6.3 million to 6.086 million, or a reduction of $214,000. I'm happy to answer any questions that City Council may have. I do have a question from Councilmember Russell that came in this afternoon. She asks, how many budget supplementals will the City of Englewood incur because of the action of this Senate or the state legislative change? And the only thing I can foresee is if our operating expenses and our revenues come in 2024, that will not be able to sustain that $214,000 property tax reduction. We don't foresee that right now.
But that's the only other potential budget supplemental that I can think of at this time.
So, I mean, if we see that happening, are there other ways to make up, I mean, maybe to cut back expenses also, not
Correct.
just doing a budget supplemental?
Correct.
Okay.
And that would be brought forth to council for their consideration.
Okay, so do we get revenue from, the city gets, in general, a certain amount of revenue from the mill levy too, correct? It's not very much.
We receive around $6 million.
Okay. And so just a portion of it is for the GO bond.
And the GO bond is in addition to, and so that's an additional $2.25 million.
Okay, all right.
And that's what that 2.182 mill levy reflects.
Right, I appreciate that. And I mean, we had the budget that we passed and the mill levy we passed in October was set because we already knew what the taxes were going to be.
We had that first certification back in August. And then because ballot measure HH did not pass during the November election, then Colorado General Assembly held a special legislative session in order to help reduce property taxes for the people of Colorado. And so that's why we have the Senate Bill 23B-001.
Okay, I appreciate that information. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Member Ward.
What's the difference in revenue we're talking about here? Have you done a calculation on the actual dollar amount?
I did. The difference that we will see, and I did it on a $400,000 home. So the current, the difference between a 2.1 mill levy was $56.28, and the change to 2.182 mill levy is $58.48. A difference of an annual change of $2.20.
And citywide for all properties, my napkin math is always questionable, I'll note, but it looks like about $75,000. Is that? Did you do like the city?
76,000. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And this may be a question for the attorney, but what would the potential consequence of us not doing this be? We easily have $76,000 in the general fund.
Yep.
We could cover our debt. We're not going to default for lack of this point. What is it? 0.82 mils.
Yep, we'll have to just do another budget supplemental for that $76,000 to be transferred from the general fund unassigned fund balance to the debt service fund.
And do we have an obligation based on the vote to raise the tax, or is that optional? If we can cover from the general fund, do we have to levy the tax? That may be a question for the
That
city
might be
attorney.
Yes, I believe we do. The vote said that the city shall levy a tax sufficient to pay the principal and interest on the GO bond. And so when we analyzed it, the voters have told city council that you shall, which means you must do this. So that's why the only way we could meet the voter directive about we shall levy a tax to pay, as well as meeting the charter requirement that we levy the tax by ordinance, and to meet the Wednesday deadline for levy certification was through this process, the emergency ordinance.
And just working through this here, this may be unrelated, so any of my peers can stop me if I'm off the rails here, but that interpretation would mean that under no circumstances will we be able to pay off that debt early, absent levying a tax sufficient to do that.
Well, I think there's nothing in there that prohibits us from paying it off early. But if there is any principal and interest left to be paid, then we are required to levy this special tax to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Member Russell.
And I think that ordinance was put in place assuming that we wouldn't have a budget surplus. I mean, I see where Member Ward is coming from, but because it was put in the ordinance when we passed the GO bond, we have to follow that, correct?
Well, first of all, I'm not exactly sure what city council what their assumptions were at the time they adopted this ballot language. But what I was quoting was the actual ballot language that went to the citizens. And interestingly, apparently it's quite unusual to have this ballot language. We are apparently the only city that is having to adopt a special ordinance in light of the state tax relief measure. But our ballot language did specifically contain this directive. But again, it doesn't contain any language that would prohibit us from paying more or paying toward the principal if that's allowed under the bonds, should we have a budget surplus.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve CB2?
I move to approve 9A2.
Sorry, 982, that's correct.
That's
Thank you,
okay.
Member Russell. Jumping ahead.
Thank you. I just
Could-
had it laying here. Thank you.
Could I get a second?
I second.
Thank you, Member Wright. Any further comments?
I do have a
Go
comment.
ahead, Member Russell.
Really, the only reason I pulled this is I knew that it was required by law that we should do this. I just want to make a statement that the state legislature presumed that HH was going to pass. And because it didn't, this was a political move. And all I want to say is there are consequences to elections, and I believe it was a political move to lower the taxes of the citizens, because if it was not an election year, I do not believe that would have been lowered. And it's been put on the backs of the municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. I'll make a statement here as well. If this does pass, immediately after, I'm going to be asking members of council regarding a special meeting, emergency meeting, to have the second reading of this as well. And this will be tomorrow, potentially. So I'll just ask you, if we do pass this tonight, whether or not we want to have the meeting tomorrow at what time. So, and with that, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Prain,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Member Wright,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you, everyone. And just real quick on this, there will be a special meeting, hopefully tomorrow on Tuesday, January 9th. City Council will hold a special meeting. We'll talk about the time and the location for this second reading and whether or not we want to do this virtual or in person. So I'd like to do it on Tuesday. We have Water and Sewer Board tomorrow. And also have Sustainability tomorrow, starting at 6:30, I believe. So I'd be happy to do this at 6 o'clock. I'd like to do it virtually for those. I know we're going to be in person, but potentially. But any thoughts on whether it's virtual or in person and the time? So go ahead, Member Russell.
Actually, I really want to do it in person. I believe that this council needs to make a commitment that we have a job to do and we need to be here. Originally, wasn't it scheduled for 5 o'clock? I mean, we got an email from somewhere that it was 5 o'clock tomorrow night. I think I just read that this morning.
We posted it as a placeholder with the intent that the time would be set.
Okay,
So
but
I
it
don't
was
think there
5
was a
o'clock
time.
was in the...
I'll have to double check. Okay.
Okay, so, I mean, I'm okay with that because we'll be in here, 5 minutes maybe? So,
Correct. Thank you, Member Russell. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
There's no requirement that has to be 24 hours later?
City Attorney, do you want to go ahead and answer that?
Yes, by state law, we're supposed to post it as soon as practicable, with a preference for 24 hours in advance, but it's not required. So it's not feasible for us to set it 24 hours in advance, given we're setting the meeting less than 24 hours in advance. So as soon as council decides where and when, then the clerks will post it immediately.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Wright.
I would like to meet in person also. I think the more we get away from virtual, the better. We're out of 2020, so.
Are you okay with 5 p.m.?
Yes.
5 p.m. works? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to make sure it works for the 6 members of council here. I don't believe Member Noonan-Camp will be able to attend, but are we able to do tomorrow, 5 p.m. in person? I know that we have work schedules, so I just want to see whether or not it's possible. And you're right, Member Russell, it'll probably be like 5 minutes, so we're in.
I guess I just want to offer up, while I appreciate doing our duty to be here, if we've discussed it tonight and we need to have a second meeting to, reading to pass this and agree on it, and it's going to be 5 minutes, I don't see the issue with it being virtual, given the short time frame of the meeting required and the fact that we have a relative obvious consensus tonight. I think if there was like a lot more discussion to be had, then I would lean more toward where you're sitting. So I just wanted to offer that up, that I think that doing it virtual would be okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Member Prang. At least for 3 of us, Member Anderson, or actually it's Member Ward, and Member Russell, we're going to be here for Water and Sewer Board anyway at 5 p.m. So it's really easy for us to just be here in person. But if we're able to do in person, I would be fine with the hybrid model, but if we could be in person, you okay with that? Okay. So we'll do tomorrow, Tuesday, January 9th, City Council will hold a special meeting at 5 p.m. here in council chambers for a second reading of the emergency ordinance, amending the 2023 mill levy rate from 2.1 to 2.182 for property tax collections in 2024 to fund the GO bond payment for the Englewood Police Headquarters. So, all right. And I think there's one more item. Yeah, that is 9B2. CB 73, Member Russell, you had a question for Director of Utilities, Mr. Van Rye.
Good evening.
Good evening. So my question about this is for the interconnect, intergovernmental agreement with Denver. Does this interconnect work in both directions? And so what if Denver has a failure? And do we have an agreement?
So the way the interconnect is set up and the way functionally it works is it is largely a one-way Denver feeding Englewood. And the reason for that is we're connecting our 12-inch pipe into their 60-inch pipe and their 36-inch pipe. And so if they have a failure, we can't feed near enough to actually, probably have a dent. So for all practical purposes, this is a one-way system. There's also a pressure differential issue that if they're on normal pressure, their pressure's higher than our pressure, which is good for us because then it allows them to feed us. However, we can't back feed into it. So there's a remote possibility that this could go the other direction, but it is extremely remote. And if we're in that type of situation, there are probably bigger problems in the entire metro area going on that supersede this. So it's a one-way connection.
Okay, I appreciate that. I mean, I was just curious if it could happen that way. I mean, I totally understand it would be impossible to do all of Denver, but would it be possible to do a section of Denver?
Yeah, if there's some kind of a localized catastrophe and there's some conceivable solution and the pressure on their end drops enough that we could actually feed that direction. But there's a lot of things that would have to line up for it to make sense. There is a bypass within this interconnect. The way it's set up is there's a pressure reducing valve that forces it to go one direction. If a whole bunch of things line up to the point and where, like I said, where hydraulically it could go the other direction, there's a remote possibility that maybe if there's a localized area and they're drawing from multiple interconnects that they might have. But again, I think there's a very remote chance that would happen. It's designed for us to have a backup for our system, and that's largely what its purpose is.
Okay, thank you. So we're not planning on the other way.
We are not planning on the other way.
Thank you.
Like I said.
Well, I just thought all the extra water that we have.
Yeah, well, like I said, there are bigger problems in the Front Range if we are sending it the other way.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any further questions for members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9B3?
I move to approve 9B3.
Thank you, Member Russell. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comments? Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Prang,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Member Wright?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you. No public hearing items for tonight. We're moving down to 11C1. This is the 2024 budget supplemental. We have Miss Jenny Nolan again to give us an overview of the supplemental.
Alrighty. So, as Mayor Sierra pointed out, tonight's our first budget supplemental resolution for 2024. But before I begin the presentation, I wanted to point out a typo on page 4 of the resolution. And we hope to have that corrected with the final copy if amended by motion tonight by City Council. The top of the page starts with use of funds. And you'll notice in section 2, paragraphs D and E, the descriptions are both the same. And bless you. And the description for paragraph E should have read appropriation request for 7 traffic signals poles that were ordered in 2023, requiring 9 to 11 months manufacturing lead time, and will be delivered in 2024. So that's the reason why. It's basically the timing of the manufacturing and the delivery of those poles. So I'm not sure if we should, I'll go through the presentation and then after that, if you so choose to amend the resolution, you can do so at that time. So, I'm not sure. Do I start the presentation? Perfect. So the budget supplementals or amendments are due in part to errors, omissions, changes in cost estimates, and or new requests. These requests are namely reviewed by the City Manager's Office and the Finance Department. The Human Resources Department will also review when the changes are due to costs relating to full-time equivalent positions. If it is determined that a budget supplemental is required, then the Finance Department works with the City Attorney's Office to prepare a resolution for City Council's consideration and authorization. The budget supplemental schedule presented here is preliminary. We will only bring forth a budget supplemental request if one is necessary. This next slide provides a very high-level review of our budget supplemental requests and compares the general fund with our other funds. And if there's any American Rescue Plan Act funding that is included in those dollar requests, we'll identify those separately on this slide for you. For this supplemental request, there are none. Just wanted to remind City Council that ARPA projects need to be contracted by the end of December 2024 and dollars spent by the end of December of 2026. These next 4 slides, I won't go over them individually, but again, it's just a higher level of what we're going to be discussing on the individual slides for the budget supplemental requests. But this slide will provide the uses of funds on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side will provide you the sources of funds. Oops. Alrighty, the first budget supplemental request is regarding our compensation and classification study. 2024 is our second year of implementing the results of that study. We had a $1 million allocation last year. Our second $1 million authorization for 2024, we're only requesting allocating $657,000 of that request. And the balance of the request will be used toward employee career achievements in 2024. And any amount that is not requested will return those funds to the unassigned fund balance of the general fund. We have 2 sustainability program requests. And these are funded through the single-use carry-out plastic bag fees that were instituted in 2023. And they are the result of House Bill 2021-1162. And that addresses the management of plastic products and provides that the city may use the fee generated by this legislation to offset costs for administrative, enforcement, recycling, composting, or other waste diversion programs and related outreach and education activities. The city receives 6 cents of every 10 cents collected from customers. And through Q3 of 2023, we received $93,000. We're anticipating additional funds for the Q4 of 2023. But those amounts won't be received until later this month. The 2024 planned purpose of these funds is for placing 5 solar trash compactors around the city and to develop a green business program with 20% financing from the city of Sheridan, or approximately $8,000. The Community Outreach and Engagement Program. The first request is for affordability housing campaign, including costs for research, engagement, strategic outcome plan, and implementation. And the second request is the use of the utility bills to provide, or the mailing of those utility bills to provide newsletters, inserts to residents when they are not receiving the Englewood magazine information. In 2023, the city received a $30,000 Comcast grant that can be used toward audio and video communication equipment. The communications department is modifying space on the second floor, and the equipment that's purchased will be installed in that room. The police department is planning to replace Motorola radio and console equipment. This replacement is 100% reimbursed by the Arapahoe County E911 Authority. And with the latest estimates, the costs are going to be increasing in 2024 by about $93,400. As I mentioned earlier, due to the 11-month manufacturing and lead time for the 7 traffic signal poles ordered in 2023, we're requesting a budget amendment since the $123,000 of this $571,000 expenditure will be incurred in 2024 and needing a supplemental in the general fund. In 2023, the Englewood Environmental Foundation was dissolved. However, we need to establish a city center property management budget for 2024. So we are requesting $1,800,000 for this, for the management of the city center property or the common area maintenance. And in addition to this, Public Works is soliciting for a property management firm and will bring forth a contract for City Council's approval in February. And depending on what that cost is, we may need an additional supplemental. We're thinking right now we won't need that, but we'll know later this month. And these next 2 slides pertain to the city's fleet inventory. This first slide is an addition to the fleet. Public Works and Parks and Rec have, whenever we add to our fleet, the requesting department makes that initial purchase. And then over the life of that vehicle, in their operating budget, we charge back to, or the department is charged that replacement cost over the life of that vehicle. And that those funds are deposited in the capital equipment replacement fund. So they're charged to the general fund, and then the revenue goes over to the capital equipment replacement fund for future replacement. So this initial budget request was included in the 2023 budget. The order was placed. However, due to manufacturing and supply chain issues, the receipt of these equipment and vehicle won't be received until early 2024. And then this next slide is for the replacement of vehicles within the Capital Equipment Replacement Fund. Oops. There we go. And we have the 7 patrol cars as well as 2 motorcycles that again were ordered in 2023 but won't be delivered until 2024. The Vector truck cost estimate we have in our 2024 budget, $400,000. However, that cost estimate has increased to $573,000, and that $173,000 increase will be shared equally between the Capital Equipment Replacement Fund and the Stormwater Drainage Fund, for which this truck is used. And then this last supplemental request is for the Bellevue Park electric train. This item was approved by council during the 2024 budget process. It was inadvertently, the amount was inadvertently left off of the Public Improvement Fund appropriation request. Again, that was my error. I forgot to include that in Tyler New World so that it would flow through to the budget request. However, the funding from the general fund to the Public Improvement Fund, that transfer was made. It was just the expenditure side of that request that was not included. So this corrects that error. So I'll take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nolan, for the presentation. Any questions from members of council? Go ahead, Member Wright.
Hi there.
Hello.
I just have a couple questions, please. When things were ordered in 2023 and because of supply chain issues, the costs have gone up substantially. You know, vehicles I'm looking at primarily. Is it the city's policy not to prepay for those things where we would have paid 2023 prices? And although we paid for it on the upfront, we would be waiting a while, but we would save, looking at the different areas, you know, almost $500,000 in different products if we would have paid, you know, ahead of time, although we'd be waiting a long time for it.
It's my understanding that these costs are 2023 prices. There may have been a inflationary price increase, knowing that the costs, or knowing that the delivery of the item might be in the next year. Probably our Public Works Director can speak more to this, but it's my understanding the only cost estimate that is included in this supplemental is that $173,000 for the Vector truck.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what we included in our 2023 budget, that amount is just being, that cost is being appropriated in 2024. So there is no additional cost, to my knowledge, for like the pickup truck or the asphalt roller. But for the Vector truck, there is a cost increase of that $173,000.
Okay. And then I'll probably have to ask communications about the affordable housing outreach project of the $35,000. Ask them a little bit more information on that.
Okay.
And I do want to confirm, Member Wright, that Director of Public Works did verify that these were contract prices from 2023. So even they're just late being delivered, and we cannot pay for them in advance. So that's why this amendment is necessary, with the exception of that factor truck.
Okay, so we do get those prices locked in when we're ordering them?
Correct.
Okay, fantastic. Okay.
Good evening.
Hi there.
Hi, happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand the affordable housing outreach project, the 35,000. I mean, what exactly does that entail?
Yeah, Sean, I don't know if you wanted to talk about the genesis of the project. I can talk specifically about the costs, but this may be helpful.
Certainly. Yes, Member Wright, when we were originally talking about the formation of the Affordable Housing Task Force, one of the things that council at that time expressed, understanding that was a previous council, but still working on that direction, was the need to really engage the community. And so Chris will go through, Director Hargath will go through what types of engagement that we're looking at. But if any of you were participate in any of the the police reform task force functions, we did a lot of community outreach with that, with telephone town halls, with surveys, with community meetings, and we did not use, we used a facilitator for that, but not necessarily a communications consultant to help us with that. This is something that was identified, I think Member Neunenkamp specifically asked that we really have a robust engagement plan. So Chris, if you want to talk about some of the details.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And I've got 3 pages of notes, so we could really jump in. But we'd be looking at 4 phases: a research phase, an engagement phase, development of a strategic outreach plan, and then the implementation. The Affordable Housing Task Force would certainly be very involved with this. In the research phase, the engagement phase, and the development of the outreach plan itself. I can jump in as detailed as you would like me to be. Do you have additional questions beyond that?
I guess my biggest question would be, what is the target audience, the recipients of the people that we're targeting for the affordable housing, or the city as a whole?
I would say the city as a whole. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. And then I guess on Thursday, we probably could discuss this even more, the in-depth part of it. I mean, it's all new to me, so communication is key, and that's one of my big things. So, yeah. Good deal. Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mayor Protem.
I wanted to speak to the communications bit. Just it does seem like a big number. Could you? I know that I don't think we spent this level of money when we did the police reform task force. What does the research phase, for example, entail? And can you give us a rough overview?
Yeah, I could break that down for you. So, actually, the research phase, we're looking at just $2,100.
Okay.
So that would be research of similar efforts that we've done in the past, a better understanding of our goals, and a debrief with our internal team that would include the Affordable Housing Task Force.
Okay, and then the next phase?
The next phase is engagement. That's at about 10,850. I got several bullet points. You want me to go through all of them? I'm happy to do it.
I would kind of appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So establish key facts to demonstrate the need for more affordable housing. Identify specific areas where public feedback can be collected and applied to decisions. Develop an engagement schedule for online and in-person opportunities. Develop an Englewood Engage project page. Work with a third-party vendor to develop, execute, and report results of a telephone town hall event. Work with a third-party vendor to develop, execute, and report results of a community-wide survey. Meet with the Affordable Housing Task Force to gather feedback and for key message development, and create a summary piece of engagement outcomes.
Okay. And then could you go through the other two phases? Sorry.
I'm sorry?
The other two phases
Oh,
too.
yeah,
Just
absolutely.
break it down for us if
Yep,
you don't
you
mind.
bet. Phase 3 is the strategic outreach plan at 7,350. Develop key messages related to the need and solutions. Determine strategies to foster empathy and understanding. Create 2 campaign concepts for consideration. Outline implementation, tactics, and a timeline. Review communications plan with internal communications team and the Affordable Housing Task Force. And then phase 4 is the implementation. That's the big ticket item at about $24,000. Update summary piece to act as core campaign graphic. Create 3 short videos. Create a social media graphics and content for posting. Design and distribution of direct mail pieces. Update Englewood Engage pages. Create FAQs. Create content for our website. Identify in-person event opportunities and provide support materials, design and develop advertising strategy, create press releases, create content and graphics for our Englewood magazine.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
And Mayor, if I could add this, Chris and I had our bi-monthly meeting this morning, and we talked about this is, the Cadillac of communication plans. And so we could scale this if council feels like that's too much money, we can scale that. There are some of those, functions that could be done in-house. The problem is capacity for our small but mighty communications team.
And I would also add that, we would need to do an RFP as well, so that process would need to be involved with this.
Go ahead, member, anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, member Ward.
Nothing to add on the subject of communications. I think one of the things that would help me when I'm working through budget supplementals in the future is a better sort of maybe a more direct analysis. A lot of this is stuff that we planned for in 2023 but weren't able to execute. So the money was already in the budget. And one of the things that I'm having trouble grasping my head around is what is an enhancement? What are we adding? What are we spending that we didn't plan for? Generally speaking, I guess anything that comes out of contingency was an unplanned expenditure. So the it was planned. So we did plan for that. 657,326.
That's part of that $1 million.
Okay. So we have a couple of enhancements on this list though, like the vac truck and the communications plan that we didn't put when we did the budget originally. And so I don't have any problem approving this supplemental. I think this is a responsible use of the citizens' money. But it would be helpful for me in the future to see this is in the piggy bank already. We already set this aside, and this is what we're adding.
Okay.
That would just help me more effectively evaluate the projects that we're looking at spending extra money on that we didn't plan for last year when we did the budget.
I appreciate that feedback.
Go ahead, member Russell.
Thank you. And I had some of my problem with some of this. I don't have an issue with things that we planned for 2023 and it got moved to 2024. What I do have problems with are things that, we got some money, so now we're going to spend it. And we spent an entire year working on the budget, and this didn't come up till afterwards. I mean, it bothers me that we do a budget and we don't follow it or don't wait till the next time just because we're ready to do it. And I've been on council 8 years. Our entire job is to go through the entire budget every year. I think we start in March generally, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then we go all the way through October, and we spend the entire year. And in the last couple of years, we have so many major budget supplementals. I mean, it bothers me that this is over $3 million. I don't know how to address that problem, but it's a little bit frustrating to me. Mostly the new stuff. The stuff that was in the budget anyway, that doesn't bother me. I get that. So it would help me, I think, if we did a little bit better planning. So Thank you. That's all I really have to say.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Prank.
I have Vector truck questions. I had to learn what it was, and then it got me curious, and I started learning, and I just want to make sure that we have a few things covered. One, why the huge discrepancy in the price tag on that? Is it just that type of truck suddenly is more valuable?
Yeah, no, the truck is, they're difficult to come by. We've looked for units that are available on lot. We have a truck now that was supposed to be decommissioned that's kind of limping along. We've also been sharing with utilities. So we're trying to stretch every dollar possible. The issue on this particular one and the reason for the change is the quote was missing a key component for the need for the truck.
Okay, that makes sense. And so in my learning, I learned that water tanks are having guarantees or a good warranty on the water tanks is important because they're so costly to replace. So could you talk to us about what that is, what that looks like for our purchase, and do we feel comfortable with our level of warranty or coverage for the water tanks on it?
We do, and I apologize, I don't know the specific, but that is something, the warranty for the water tank and the pump are two critical components. We have issues with our current truck on both of those components. It's currently down, although we're not doing a lot of vacuuming just due to the season and the temperatures at the moment. So it's not hypercritical during the winter, but the team has evaluated that, including our fleet staff who have been maintaining the truck, and they are comfortable with the warranty.
Okay. And then the other issue is proximity to services to fix the vehicle. Is that an issue for us here? Do we have a regional or nearby servicer of that so that when our trucks are down, we don't have extended periods of time where it's not in use?
We have on-call contracts with vendors who repair the trucks.
Okay.
The challenge that we see, and it's not specific to just the vac truck, but it's our heavy equipment. Sometimes there are parts that are specific to those pieces of equipment that the vendor has to order. And that can take a little while. So we try and purchase parts in advance, especially if they're known wear parts. So we always have two in stock. So when one's replaced, we kind of backfill that stock. But for major issues, we do have on-call contracts, and they're able to address those provided the parts are in stock and available.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for satisfying my curiosity.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Any further questions from members of council? City Manager, I see you have your light on.
Thank you, Mayor.
Go ahead, City Manager.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. Totally understand the need for the planning and making sure that we have this. It is a $217 million budget. What I will say about the majority of these funds is that they're already in the budget or directly in response to something the council requested. So when we look at comp and class, that money was already in the budget. We're simply putting it into the correct department. So that million is not new money that we're asking for. It's just simply putting it from contingency into the correct department budget. The single-use carry, plastics, we were estimating, those funds. We have a better sense after the budget closed of where we were going to be out with that funding. So that's outside funding that we're asking for a budget amendment, but it's not costing the city anything. That's all external money. The Affordable Housing Task Force, point could be made that we could have anticipated this, but keep in mind, we didn't finalize formation of that till September. And so we were well into the budget and getting ready to close that out. But I agree that one perhaps could have been foreseen. The AV equipment is from a grant. The police department's radio funding is 100% grant funded, so that's not costing the city. The signal poles, the delivery was simply delayed. It would be illegal for us to prepay that based on our city financial policies, so we had to delay that. You all dissolved EAF, that's 1.8 million of this budget. So I think when we look at most of these, with the exception of the Scrivener's error, the last one that you see, all of these were either actions that we are having to take as a staff to respond to council requests or something that was planned, and now we're simply putting that into the correct budget. We've brought a lot of rigor around these budget amendments since I got here. When my first year here, when I came here, the previous year we'd had 800,000 in salary adjustments that never went to council. We do not do those things anymore. We have much more rigor when it comes to the city budget with regard to these amendments, and we'll continue to do that. But to some of the points that have been made, we'll try to bring more clarity to how we present those as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, City Manager. With no further questions, actually, I do have one other question for you, Ms. Nolan. You stated that there's a correction that we have to amend as part of this ordinance.
Yes.
Can you remind me where that's at?
Yes,
And
it's,
how it
it's,
should read?
it's the resolution.
Yep.
And it's the typo.
Okay.
And I'm not exactly sure if this is just by motion, City Attorney Niles, or
We could just make a motion to amend that language. Is it one of the whereas, the Public Works Department order in
actually, it's
2023?
no, it's under page 4, under where it says, it's the top of the page says use of funds. And then it's section 2, where it says general fund, unassigned fund balance.
Yep.
And then it will be subparagraph E. Public Works Department, Traffic Engineering Division.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that in that parentheses right below that title is.
Should read the traffic pools and not, because
Yes,
it's a duplication of D.
correct.
Okay. Okay. I know what you're getting at, and I think it's part of the whereas where it should read, the way that I'm understanding it should read, where is it at? The Public Works Department ordered in 2023 7 traffic signal poles. However, at the time of placing the order, staff was informed that delivery would take 9-11 months, blah, 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 that kind of thing, right? Okay. I think we're good there.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
I understand it. Does anybody need any clarification up here on the dais, or? All right. And with that, can I get a motion to approve
So moved.
11C2 with the change? So,
Yeah, so moved.
thank you, Member Ward. Could I get a second? Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comments? Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Praying,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Member Wright,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Ms. Nolan, for the presentation, and as well as members of staff for the clarification. Moving on to 11C2, this is amending the 2024 Parks and Rec, Library, and Golf Rate and Fee Schedule. Ms. Nolan, I think we have you up again. Busy night. We're taking your time.
Staff requests City Council approve by motion the Parks and Recreation, Library, Golf Department's 2024 fee changes in order to provide department flexibility to change fees based on demand or peak usage of the city facilities. And the following changes are recommended. Changes to the Englewood Recreation admission fee. The range currently is $4.25 to $6.25, and we're requesting a 25-cent increase at the top end. So the new range would be $4.25 to $6.50. And this increase will impact non-resident fee admissions. And we anticipate generating approximately $425 in annual revenue. The second general fund related revenue increase is to the Pirates Cove admission fee. And this range, this fee range will change from $11 to $20 to $11 to $21. The dollar increase again will affect the non-resident fee admissions. And we're anticipating generating about $90,000 from this rate increase. And then the golf course fee increases that are proposed for the 9-hole and 18-hole weekday and weekend rate increases are estimated to generate about $234,000 in revenue. And I can either answer any questions you may have, but we also have Parks Rec team here in full force who can also address any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nolan, for that. Member Russell and then Member Ward.
So my only question is, did City Council review these fees on October 2nd when we?
You did.
And
yes.
did we raise them then, or?
We did not.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's my understanding.
Member Ward.
Oh, we did. Oh, excuse me. We did. Back in October. Sorry, we did. We did raise it.
Did we raise it then?
I can't remember what they were. Sorry.
Good question. They were just nominal fees, like $1, $2, and we're increasing it slightly to address some of the increased costs with inflation and also staff costs.
So did we not know that? I mean, October, that was what, only 3 months ago that we looked at it?
Part of it was the comp and class study that came through with those results. And so like golf courses, one of the heavier impacted entities from the comp and class. And so this is addressing that as well as capital needs.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Member Ward.
This, I think, speaks a little bit to the earlier question, but under financial implications in the staff memo, rec center revenue is predicted to go up by $425 annually. I have to ask, what's the point? Why would we bother for $425 a year?
Well, we already raised some of the rates through the budget process, and this was just addressing the non-resident fee. They felt it was 25 cents was probably what the market could handle right now. We just got done doing a recreation survey, and there was comments related to the cost of attending the rec center compared to other recreation centers or gyms in the area. So with that knowledge, we didn't want to raise it too much just yet.
Okay.
And that's
Member
almost,
Wright. Go ahead.
thank you, I'm sorry. That's almost a segue to my question. In comparison to other rec centers, golf courses, water parks, what are these fees in comparison to other ones in their neighboring cities or comparable?
Sure, and that's a good question. So we always look at neighboring cities, like South Suburban is one of our biggest competitors. We look at what they're charging. We always stay a little bit below them. Same with the golf course. Shannon here's our manager for the golf course, and she looks at comparable rates, what other golf courses in the Front Range and state of Colorado are charging. And we are one of the lower courses currently, but we're also doing a financial master plan, looking at all the capital costs that the golf course is going to incur with an aging infrastructure, not only the course, but the pro shop, clubhouse, and addressing that. So you may see a $200,000+ increase in revenue, which is wonderful. But when you have a clubhouse that may be well over $1 million to improve, it's going to take a few years to build that up.
And one other golf course has the Nuggets come and play, right?
Right.
I saw that. Good job. So.
Any other questions for members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11C2?
And put a motion through to approve.
Thank you, Member Wright. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Prang. Any further comments? Go ahead, Member Ward.
I have to admit, I'm skeptical about raising the recreation center admission by 25 cents for a $425 net gain in annual revenue. That just doesn't make sense to me. So, I like to defer to staff, and 650 is an even number, but when I can't see the point, I have trouble supporting it. So for that reason, I would like to propose an amendment and remove the rec center increase from this list of fee increases. We can wait till next year when we do the fees, or later this year when we do the fees, to increase that one.
Thank you, Member Ward. So you want to make an amendment to remove the rec center fee? Go ahead, Member Wright.
Member Ward, can I ask what hurts it though? I mean, $425 is $425 that could go to the supplies that are needing for cleaning it. It could go to, the Volunteers of America bring in lunches every day to Malley Center and stuff, so it could go to cleaning up after that. And
we could easily incur that amount of cost in incidentals, just producing new signage for the rate increase, updating our online materials and our printed materials with the new rate. I don't see the point at all.
I myself kind of had to swallow hard when it's $30-some-odd thousand for communications for the Affordable Housing Task Force. I don't know. It's anything that we can earn, be it $200 or $400 to help to support the rec centers and stuff. I think we should do that, especially non-residents. So just my opinion.
Yeah, thank you, Member Wright. Actually, can we just get a second on the motion to amend if there is appetite for that for members of council.
I'll second it for the sake of discussion here.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Any further comments? Go ahead, Member Russell.
So the Malley Center is not on here. Can I ask a question? Was there a reason the Malley Center was not included on there?
Thank you. I need to come in front of you more often, don't I? The reason Malley Center was on there is we looked at that one, and those fees that we're charging right now are pretty comparable with everything else, so we didn't think we really needed to do that. So we really looked at the Recreation Center fees as well. We wanted to look at that, and also the Pirates Cove fees. So, and the reason with the Recreation Center fees was, the reason we didn't want to go more than that was kind of like what Director Underhill said, was that when we did a comparison to South Suburban, who was probably our strongest competitor, is that if we went much higher than that, we'd be equal to or greater than what South Suburban was paying. And we had a fear that we'd probably be losing some customers going to South Suburban as opposed to staying with the Recreation Center.
And I mean, so how do we look at this when we start raising fees? What is the breaking point? And I mean, I don't know, looking at the economy, everything could fall apart. Which even if we're the lowest, it could fall apart for us too. I don't know that I have a problem with the 25 cents here, but do we keep on top of this? I mean, for 25 cents, if you lost 2 or 3 customers, it could impact. I would be really concerned if it was the Malley Center. I'm not as concerned because it's the rec center.
Sure.
But so do we keep on top of that too?
We do. Every year when we go through the budget process, we make sure that we go through and we look at all the fees that we are currently charging, and we look at the surrounding communities also to see what other recreation departments, what they are charging. And we try to look at like facilities as well. So when we get to charging Pirates Cove fees, it's really hard to compare those fees because there's not another facility that is that's like Pirates Cove. We're right in the middle of not as big as Waterworld, not as big as Elitch's, so it's harder to charge those types of fees. But then the other small water parks that are out there, like Foothill's got a couple water parks, Parker's got a water park, Golden's got a water park, but they're significantly smaller than what ours are. So we try to stay within there what the market's going to bear with us. And then if you notice what we did with both the fees for the Recreation Center and for Pirates Cove is we went ahead and we just raised the non-resident fees is what we did. We didn't want to impact the citizens of Englewood like we did the non-residents.
And I do appreciate that. The one thing I would like to see is thinking more forward thinking is if we raised them in October, maybe we should have been thinking forward at that time. I mean, I don't know if the inflation rates had come out yet, but.
Yeah, we didn't have the results back from the comp and class yet. And so once that was brought to light from us, that's when staff sat down and we looked at it and said, okay, how can we help offset that a little bit?
Okay, so that makes sense. Are we done with comp and class as far as you know?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments? I'll weigh in on the motion to amend. I'm going to oppose the motion to amend. I understand where Member Ward is coming from, kind of to use a term that Mr. Bise stated earlier. It's just de minimis, right, in terms of just adding a 25-cent rate or just raising it 25 cents. We've already done the work, but in the future, I wouldn't want us to spend a lot of time to just do a 25-cent increase on a rate. But since the work's already been done, I'm going to go ahead and support the original motion, but I will be opposed to the motion to amend. Anyone else? And with that, go ahead, Member Russell.
I agree with you, Mayor. I really would like in the future that we just do this one time, and hopefully because comp and class is done, it won't come back a second time. So I do get where you're coming from, Member Ward, and, but I think I'm going to go ahead and support not the amendment, but the motion, the original motion. Thank you.
Perfect. Go ahead, Member Ward.
Yeah, for me, just expounding a little bit, I think this is a case where the juice is not worth the squeeze. I think we could easily, as a city, incur more than $425 in cost just making the adjustments to all our socials and all of our printed materials and our signage, and collecting the added fee. And I just did a calculation at $15 an hour, which is obviously a fairly low wage. It buys 28 hours of staff time. It's not getting us, I don't think, what it could end up costing us. I would rather see a slightly larger rate increase, maybe 50 cents or $1 in October when we normally do the rates. So that's the purpose of my amendment, which is doomed to failure at this point. Let's go ahead and take the vote.
Thank you, Member Ward. And with that, can we please vote on the motion to amend?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Praying,
Nay.
Member Russell,
Nay.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Member Wright,
Nay.
Mayor Sierra.
Nay.
Let the record show 4 ayes and 2 nays.
The other way.
Sorry. Yes.
Thank you very much. All right. So
2
the motion,
ayes and 4 nays.
Perfect. Thank you very much, City Clerk Carlisle. With that, the motion to amend failed. So now the motion on the table is the regular amendment. Any comments? And with that, can we please vote?
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Praying,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Member Wright,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you very much. And thank you very
Thank you.
much to Parks and Rec for the presentation. Moving on to 11C3, this is a professional service agreement with Jacobs Engineering Group. We got Director Van Rye to give us an overview.
My bad. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Back again to talk about the next step in the Interconnects project. And with me tonight is Cliff Stevens, who is Cliff is sitting here in the front row. He's been with us since about July and is the project manager on this Interconnects. And actually, interestingly enough, Cliff spent 18 years working for Aurora Water, and he and I worked together at Aurora Water. And one of the projects we worked on at Aurora Water was reconnecting the emergency interconnects between Aurora and Denver Water 12 years ago. So it's interesting how we just do these same things a decade later. So he's got a lot of knowledge on this and a lot of good expertise. And so he's the project manager on it. So he's here in case there's any questions tonight that I'm unable to answer. So what's before you tonight is the next step, which is the design contract to design these interconnects. And what we've talked about, as you can see in this map, we have Denver Water in the red and Englewood is the blue area in the center, and we're fully surrounded by Denver. So it makes for an opportune situation to allow Denver to connect to us to provide that emergency backup. We're looking at 2 interconnection points. That's what we've determined hydraulically in our conceptual level analysis is required to be able to provide 100% supply to Englewood Water in the case of an emergency. So in an emergency situation, we're trying to provide enough water to keep the system operating. It may not necessarily mean that everybody can water their grass at the full rate that they may have. We're trying to get to the point where people have water at their houses. But that's part of what will be looked at in the overall hydraulic design. The IGA we just talked about earlier this evening. It was the item that was on consent that was pulled off. We've been working with Jacobs on this. Jacobs started their work on this. They're an on-call, one of our on-calls that we use. And so they did the conceptual analysis of this, and then we are recommending to move forward based on their work on this into preliminary design and the design phase. They have familiarity with Denver Water's requirements. There's team continuity since they've started the concept. It makes sense since they've done good work so far to move into a the next phase, which is a contract. And they've helped us with get through some of the challenges in working through this project, especially with this isn't like Denver Water's highest priority, but it is a priority for us, and so they've assisted us in ensuring that we can get them to react, and the fact that we have it's worked really well. The contract is proposed to not to exceed $464,533, and it was brought to Water and Sewer Board in December and recommended for approval by council. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Director Van Wright. Any questions from members of council? Actually, I'll just ask a question. I think I know the answer to this, but the E. coli scare that we had a couple years back,
Yes.
would this be a potential solution for if that was to arise again, or is it not because in that situation, we didn't know what zone was being impacted?
Yeah, this is more for like a catastrophic failure, like, like a infrastructure, like the plant goes down.
Right.
So we have one water plant that is the supply for Englewood. We're actually looking at a process to take that one plant and functionally divide it into two, so that we actually have two redundant trains throughout the course of the plant. So if one side fails, we actually can bring up the other side, which creates a form of resiliency within the single plant. But if the whole plant goes down or the whole pump station goes down, that's what this is designed to do. Or if we have a transmission main that has a catastrophic failure and we lose pressure and we lose supply, we can isolate it, but may need to backfeed from these. So as it relates to the E. coli issue from a few years ago, I can't think of a scenario where this would necessarily be the result, unless it was something to do with a failure in the treatment process. But what was ultimately determined to be the issue with the E. coli was a small service line issue on a meter pit. So this wouldn't necessarily have done anything in that case.
That's what I thought. Thank you very much, Director Van Wright. With no further questions, can I get a motion to approve 11C3?
Move to approve 11C3.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Prang. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Prang,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Member Wright,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you very much, Director Van Wright.
Thank you.
And moving on to 11C4, this is the transfer of the current and future opioid litigation settlement funds to Arapahoe County. We have City Attorney Tamara Niles.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I don't have a PowerPoint tonight because I presented PowerPoint upon PowerPoint upon PowerPoint, I think 5 different times, about the opioid settlement. So just for the new council members, for background, which there is some background and PowerPoints in your packet materials. The state of Colorado participated in a nationwide settlement for opioid arising out of opioid addiction and the effects of opioids. And when the state of Colorado participated in the settlement, we approved an MOU to allow us to participate in that settlement. After we did that, then we actually approved by ordinance an IGA creating the Arapahoe County region that also received a pot of money from the settlement and which we're a participant. And then we also authorized the receipt of settlement funds, 2 different pots of settlement funds so far. So what we have expected to receive so far is about $697,000 over the course of 20 years. But the methods or the projects upon which we can expend those funds are significantly limited to combating opioid and the effects of opioids and opioid addiction in our community. Because of this, it's not that much money over a course of 20 years with limited projects and some fairly significant reporting requirements. We decided at that time we were going to go ahead and take our opioid funds and see what the region planned to do with the money. Because we had discussed a concern that we wanted to make sure our citizens and the people in Englewood that are personally affected by the opioid crisis do benefit from the settlement funds. So some cities in the Arapahoe County region just immediately transferred their money to the region, thinking that if we all combine our money, then it can have a greater impact in the entire county. But we took a measured approach. Let's wait and see what the region plans to do. Councilmember Ward has been our appointed designee to attend the region meetings, and in fact, I believe is the head of a working group in the region to determine usage of the funds. So in your packet, it's page 296 of your packet, if you're following along electronically, it lists what the Region 9 Opioid Abatement Council plans to expend its settlement funds for the first 2 years, which includes detox and residential facilities that is a need in our community as well. But of course, given we only have $690,000 over 20 years, the region proposes to spend $1.2 million in year one. There's also other projects including sober living, transitional safety zones, a walk-in center, peer navigator, harm reduction, co-responders, and student leadership programs. So I spoke with Councilmember Ward to determine if he was satisfied that the region's proposed expenditures would appropriately benefit the citizens of Englewood. He is so satisfied. I spoke with city leadership staff to see if they had identified any specific projects, if we should hold back some of the funds for a specific project in Englewood. And it was the consensus among staff that the work that it would take to identify a project, get it approved from the state, appropriately tracks expenditures and then report them to the state was too much work to justify the benefit when the regional council already has all of that set up and then could apply those extra funds to implement the projects that they have already identified. So tonight I would request that City Council adopt a motion that formally transfers our opioid settlement funds to the region. Again, they have the same limitations the city does in expenditures. We're not taking money out of the general fund that we could use to pay for city operations or staff. This is money that can only be used to combat the opioid epidemic. So again, the motion would be to transfer our settlement funds to the region, and then we can do a final report to the state notifying them that that is the case, and the region will receive and expend our funds going forward.
Thank you very much, City Attorney Niles. Any questions from members of council? Member Prang.
I don't have questions. I do have a request of Councilmember Ward. I am fully supportive of transferring this money to the county. I do think that there's power in having a regional response. It has been an ongoing issue in the nation for years, so not having little money here that we're trying to do a lot with and sending it to the region is smart. Just a request for Councilmember Ward, since you're our representative to the task group, I'd really like to see them have some discussion, or know if they've already had discussion on whether any of the allowable areas of expenditures, the 5 areas that are laid out, include funds specifically for transportation. So getting persons transported to engage in treatment, and then potentially between levels of treatment as they're progressing through their care. And I ask that because I just know that it's a huge barrier for people to actually engage in services. So if you could just take that back to the task group and ask that be included, or consideration of it.
Yeah, so last year I attended the Attorney General's annual convention, the first one that was held at the Carson Center downtown. And there was a lot of talk about what you could use funds for. And the answer is anything that is necessarily connected to opioid abatement. So in my opinion, the answer is yes. Now, as a region, we focused on things like treatment and harm reduction. And I chaired the co-responder working group to talk about a regional approach to co-responder programs and do some research on that. There are a few other working groups. Sober living is another example of a working group, and those working groups are setting out preliminary plans as well, which the county is beginning to fund. So the Region 9 Task Force actually is preparing to sign contracts and and start spending some of that money, laying the groundwork for future response. But it's coming along well.
I'm happy to hear that the conversations include anything needed. I do think that calling out transportation specifically is really important. Just in the work that I do in my day job, knowing when you contract with providers that are providing these services, them having that reassurance that it's called out explicitly that you can get reimbursed for transporting persons into care and between levels of care, I think just eases their mind, and it just, provides them that whole array of reimbursable expenses. So.
Thank you, Member Prang. Member Wright?
Thank you. I wanted to make sure it's $697,000 over the course of that 20 years, not per year, correct?
Yes, that's total.
Okay, because the PAC made it sound like you're receiving that much every year. So I
No,
was like,
if we had that much every year, we could probably, it would justify the staff expense to identify our own projects, and it varies at the amount that we get every year based on the settlement agreement from, I believe there's 6 parties that have now settled. So it varies every year as to who's contributing and how much.
okay. And then, Member Ward may be able to answer this, since we're later to the game. I like the programs that they're listing, but my big concern is where are they located? Arapahoe County is big. Are they going to be accessible to our residents? I would hate for someone to have to go clear to Aurora to receive services. And that, is a definite concern.
Yeah, a lot of that hasn't necessarily been determined yet. But what I can tell you is that the region spans the entirety of Arapahoe County, with the exception, I believe, of Deer Trail. There has been a focus. We have to remember that we're on the far west end of the county, but there has been a focus on making services available for the benefit of the entirety of the county. So we do have representatives from Aurora, and other places across the county, but everybody, with the exception of one city that I have some beef with for the way they've behaved, has been largely cooperative in, instead of trying to protect their slice of the pie, ensuring that the pie benefits the entirety of the county.
Okay. And then when you were talking to different parts of the staff and stuff like that, was the courts contacted and spoke to? Because, they have the navigator and they work with a lot of this population. And did they speak up? Because I was reading the PAC and it's, I had the impression that nobody from the city was interested in engaging in this.
So we discussed it at the leadership team meeting, which is all the department heads, which includes the municipal court administrator, Kenitha Julian. So she does attend every one of those meetings. I'm assuming she was there, but at the end of the meeting, I said, speak now or forever hold your peace. This is your chance to speak up. And everyone agreed at that time that the regional approach was the best way to benefit our citizens.
Okay. So they'd be able to take advantage of and say, hey, once this is up and gone. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions for members of council? Go ahead, Member Ward.
I'm sorry, I don't have a question. I'll wait till after the motion.
Sounds good. With that, can I get a motion to approve 11C4?
So moved.
Thank you, Member Ward. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Ward, first comment.
Yeah, I did want to speak a little bit more about the regional benefit. One of these programs is actually being awarded to the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department, and they have a setup at the jail where they provide treatment to people who come in who are drug addicted, and help connect them with services. And some of this money will enhance that program through the Sheriff's Department. And obviously, a lot of people who have substance abuse problems encounter law enforcement. I think that will be a helpful approach to spending the money for a countywide benefit. The other thing I wanted to note is one of the reasons why I wanted this to come forward. I was skeptical when we first found out that we would be receiving money directly. I wanted us to control what we did with Englewood's share of the money. And if you look at the distribution of the regional resources, the allocation of the settlement funds, 10% to the state, 20% to participating local governments, 60% goes to the region, and then 10% to state infrastructure. So what we're doing is what a lot of local governments have done is deferring our 20% share to the county to enhance that county portion, that region portion. It just so happens that Region 9 is the entirety of Arapahoe County, a single county region. And I think that it really is the highest and best use of this money in this case. A lot of experts talked for a year about how we intended to use this money. And there has really been a future-focused orientation on how the money is used. And the last thing I'll say is that there's maybe not an expectation, but a very distinct possibility that the amount of money in these settlements will increase as additional pharmaceutical companies and other entities continue to settle lawsuits related to the opioid crisis. We saw that once, as Attorney Niles pointed out. Some additional settlement money did come in after the initial distribution, but I think that we will continue to see some additional funds. One of the members of the commission is one of our county commissioners, and he likens this a lot to the cigarette or tobacco settlements. So we've focused on not repeating the mistakes that were made when the tobacco money came in. And I think that we have come up with a product that will be beneficial to the county. And I've actually learned a lot sitting on this task force. So I appreciate council entrusting that task to me. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Ward, any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Pring,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Member Wright,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you, and thank you very much, City Attorney Niles. We're moving on to Mayor's Choice. Just one item, we're going to have board and commission interviews, I believe, what was it, 28 total interviewees, somewhere around there? Which means it's gonna have to take place over 2 nights. And it's gonna be, today's what, the 8th, so it's be the 22nd and the 23rd. Is everyone okay with starting interviews at 5 p.m. on Monday, the 22nd? Going until about 9 o'clock, having dinner at some point that evening. They're gonna be in person in Pikes Peak. And then whatever's left over, we'll do on Tuesday nights. Is everybody okay starting at 5 p.m. for the interview? Just trying to get out early and then having whatever's left over another an hour or so on Tuesday night. So, and dinner at 5 p.m. 4:30ish or so. We'll have dinner like at 4:30 and then start the interviews at 5. Well, no, I'm just saying we can show up at 4:30 if we only show up at 5 and have dinner while we're doing the interviews. I think that would be okay as well. Just we're trying to fit in a quick time. Is that okay? All right. 5 o'clock it is on Monday, the 22nd, and then whatever's left over on the 23rd. Ooh, I did not even think about that. 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. on 6 on Tuesday, the 23rd?
Don't we have the thing on the 23rd, the tour? Yeah, it'd have to be 6.
Okay.
Please.
6 o'clock on the 23rd is fine with me. Fine with everyone else? All right, that concludes my mayor's choice. Anybody, council member's choice? Go ahead, Member Wright.
I do, please. I have 2 council requests, please.
Yep.
The first one is if we can get estimates, please, to replace the cushions on these benches. They're just worn. And people that may have back or leg problems and stuff, it could cause more issues to them. And I don't know if anyone's ever sat in some of these side chairs, but I'm just waiting for someone to go through them. So it could end up being a liability to us. Yeah, and the benches, I mean, it got to a point that I was bringing my own cushion because it was so bad and uncomfortable. So if there's a way that we could get, this is the people's house here, and we're making it incredibly uncomfortable for them to be here, to sit, to be at these meetings. The second one is I have been contacted by a couple of citizens asking if there is an ordinance on the amount of time a resident or a contractor can have a roll-off at their house or a job site. One resident has said that there has been a roll-off on a property so long that they're counting it in years. So, and then on top of it, it's been there so long that people are now coming at night and throwing things into the roll-off. So it's become a new dumping site for people. So if I was looking, I couldn't find any kind of law that we have on how long someone could have a roll-off on a property or a job site. But if someone's counting it in years, maybe it's something we need to look into, because I think it would open up to other crimes if it's sitting there. If we could look into that, please.
Thank you very much, Member Wright. All right, perfect. Anyone else for council member's choice? All right, city manager's choice.
With the lateness of the hour, I'll just keep it to one logistical question. You all mentioned that the emergency meeting will be here tomorrow night. We can certainly do that here in council chambers. We could also do that in the community room without the need for off-duty or pulling a police officer or pulling somebody off patrol. We can do either one.
I'm fine with either, whatever's easiest. So I'd be okay doing it in community room. I
Okay.
have no problem with
Well,
that.
if you can announce that, just
Okay.
officially. Thank you.
All right, I am okay. Is everyone okay with having the emergency ordinance meeting tomorrow at 5 p.m. in the community room? So we do not require a need to have an officer. All right, perfect. Community room it is, 5 p.m. tomorrow. Anything else, city manager? All right, and we are now adjourned. Everyone, have a great evening. We'll see you all tomorrow in the community room at 5 p.m. Have a good night.